The Baltic Sea is ours to protect, not ours to master. It is ours to treasure, not ours to own.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This year, HELCOM is turning 50. Yet, despite 5 decades of regional cooperation, the Baltic Sea is still at risk. So should we be celebrating this anniversary? We believe there are reasons to celebrate. While we still have a long way to go, we've also come a long way. Over the decades, countless people have joined forces within HELCOM, helping to make the Baltic Sea a better, healthier place. This film serves as a tribute to all those people and to their remarkable achievements.
Thousands of years ago, the Scandinavian ice sheet melted, gradually giving birth to the Baltic Sea. A spellbinding tale began in which, over the course of many centuries, the sea became a reflection of who we are. This tale illustrates how humankind can alter our world and how the choices we make today reverberate far into the future, shaping the unseen horizons ahead. Sadly, by the middle of the 20th century, the Baltic Sea was in a sorry state, degraded and depleted by human misuse. In 1974, a vision emerged in the countries around the Baltic Sea, a commitment to protecting the Baltic Sea from the growing pressures caused by human activities. The Helsinki Convention was adopted, and the Helsinki Commission, or HELCOM, started its work. As we celebrate our past, however, we must acknowledge the setbacks and face the reality of the present. The Baltic Sea remains in peril, its beauty still marred by scars caused by human activities. We cannot truly thrive without a thriving sea. The fate of the Baltic Sea is forever intertwined with our own. There is still time for a happy ending to this story. Let us write it together. We are the Baltic Sea, and the Baltic Sea mirrors us.
welcome to this 50th anniversary celebration of signing of Helsinki Convention. A very warm welcome also to our participants watching us online, and of course, very welcome everyone from the big and friendly HELCOM family. My name is Sandra Kropa, and it is my honor to be today here as the host for this celebration event that will take place a few hours ahead. And the real celebration will, of course, have also in the evening in the same building. But as we already heard, we are the Baltic Sea, and despite challenges and problems, we still have something to celebrate and be proud of. And there is this, as maybe you know, saying that Baltic Sea is very unique and I would say unique treasure, not only in terms of its biodiversity or salinity, but also the history. And I don't know how many of you know that Baltic Sea is the youngest sea in the world. At the same time, Baltic Sea is one of the most polluted in the world, and also at the same time one of the most protected, because the Baltic Sea as a region already has long been one of the areas in the world with the most intensive international cooperation in its protection. So I think that is something to be proud of, and we all can be proud of, and it is something to say about HELCOM. It wouldn't be possible with all these activities that have been done in this half a century already. There's a saying that people protect what they love, and I really hope that after today's discussions and inspirational speeches, we all will love Baltic Sea even more than we did maybe yesterday or before, no matter are we representatives of some international NGOs or scientists or policymakers or just simply friends of Baltic Sea. We will be hearing interesting stories from people who were writing this 50 years history of Baltic Sea protection. In the first part of our event, there will be very interesting discussion. We will be recalling the proud past. And of course, with this proud past feeling, we'll be taking a look also in our bright future and promising future. And there will be also in the second part of this event, very interesting discussion about the future of Baltic Sea protection and Baltic Sea itself. And of course, we won't forget the present, where we stand right now. It will also be questions that will be asked and answers that will be found during today's event. But now, I really hope that we'll have a fruitful afternoon and very nice celebration in the evening. And let's the celebration begin. I would like, for official opening of this event, ask on the stage Minister of Environmental Protection and Regional Development of Latvia, Ms. Inga Bērziņa, on stage, please.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Dear HELCOM friends, it's a great honor and pleasure to address you today in Riga to commemorate the landmark anniversary, 50 years since signing of the first Convention of the Protection of the Marine Environment of the Baltic Sea area. The importance of the sea for each one of us and for all of us together goes without saying. Following the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm in 1972, growing concern about the degradation of the Baltic Sea environment and the realization the existing relevant conventions did not cover the specific needs and problems of the fragile Baltic Sea ecosystem prompted the Baltic Sea coastal states to conclude the first convention covering all sources of marine pollution. Given the cross-border nature of the marine environment, regional cooperation is essential to meet the Convention's objectives. We are pleased to mark this important half-century during the Latvian chairmanship. This year marks also 30 years since Latvia became a state party of the Helsinki Convention. Accession to the Convention for Latvia came at a crucial time with geopolitical changes and emerging environmental challenges in the region immediately after regaining the independence of our country. The Ronneby Conference of the Heads of Governments of the Baltic Sea states in 1990 opened up an opportunity for Latvia to participate in the work of HELCOM, to jointly plan actions towards cleaner Baltic Sea even before the formal independence of Latvia has been regained. Informed discussions require science-based knowledge. Science policy dialogue has been always at the heart of HELCOM, providing the framework for scientific cooperation towards a vision, science we need for the sea we want. Today we celebrate the evolution of this wide-ranging cooperation from initially cooperation in scientific research and finding of solutions to prevent pollution from ships to the ecosystem approach to sustainable marine management and strategic Baltic Sea action plan at present. Nowadays, we are witnessing significant progress in terms of people's awareness and behavior change. This also has been possible thanks to our trusted partners, HELCOM observers. Today, HELCOM is a globally recognized example of regional cooperation. Latvia is proud being a member of HELCOM and to participate in a work to meet the Convention's objectives and to protect and improve the marine environment of the Baltic Sea for present and future generations. Dear HELCOM members and friends, we have continued to work together at crucial moments for the region and in the winds of change, such as an EU enlargement. Today, we also face challenges, but we are confident about the future. We have proven HELCOM as an effective and well-functioning regional cooperation organization capable of action even in unforeseen and force major situations. With that, I declare the Jubilee session opened. I wish you all an interesting and inspiring event. Happy anniversary, HELCOM family.
Thank you, dear Minister. It was planned that also today we will have here Minister of Climate and Environment of Finland, Mr. Kai Mikkonen, with us in Riga, but unfortunately in the last minute he couldn't join us. So this is why he will deliver his message today online for us. I really hope that we will hear now Mr. Kai Mikkonen. Please, the video.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, I would really love to be there, but I am here sick at home. Fortunately enough, technology enables me to reach you also from home nowadays. Actually, in a similar way, modern technology enables us to decrease nutrient load, to decrease eutrophication of the Baltic Sea without compromising production of food or industrial production. We already have a technology, for instance, for such animal manure treatment, which enables circulating nutrients away from overload areas in connection with biogas production. More surprisingly, we actually already have inspiring pilots of collecting phosphorus and nitrogen and all other nutrients also directly from our sea. For instance, by farming algae and turning it into everyday goods. Actually, I recommend to check uh, originbyocean.com site for certain inspiring examples from that. Dear friends, nowadays people in their 50s seem to be at the peak of life, sometimes embarking on entirely new journeys and often taking on board new challenges. This is inspiring to see, of course, also for me personally, as turning to 45 actually next July, and 5 years goes very fast. But this should definitely be the case when it comes to HELCOM as well. HELCOM is holding the position of the oldest regional seas organization in the world and is still a global forerunner, both when it comes to assessing the status of our marine environment as well as in laying down measures to improve it. HELCOM continues to serve as a role model for many other regions. Finland, acting as the host country to HELCOM, takes great pride in our regional cooperation, being able to enable it also as a hosting country. HELCOM Secretariat, based in Helsinki, has evolved together with the increased knowledge of our shared sea. Actually, for me personally, HELCOM has always been the legitimate knowledge center defining reliable status of things at the sea. Thus, it was not very much a surprise that I visited HELCOM Secretariat actually exactly 20 years ago when I was preparing a so-called Baltic Sea initiative for a member of those days European Parliament, who I was serving as an advisor. That member of European Parliament, by the way, later became the current president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, who has also always been interested and taking initiatives about seeing Baltic Sea as something which should connect us and be in the heart of our cooperation. High quality expert knowledge is something that has always defined the HELCOM Secretariat in Helsinki, and this knowledge base continues to be the crown jewel of our cooperation. There would be no HELCOM without the Secretariat, obviously. In the beginning, the Secretariat consisted of 6 people. Now there is 46 people. The Secretariat speaks actually 17 languages, includes nationalities from British to Spanish to Brazilian. Staff is rather young. Actually, 20% of the staff only has reached 45 years of age, so 80% is younger than me. That sounds, at least for me, already quite young. No wonder this organization does not grow old even when turning 50 as an organization. Excellencies, we are often reminded that the Baltic Sea remains among the most polluted seas in the world. As we all know, this is largely also due to its nature as a semi-enclosed, shallow, brackish sea with a catchment area 4 times larger than the sea itself. Actually, for me, for instance, it's been a bit of an inconvenient fact to understand that if a phosphorus molecule gets into the water in a Finnish river, it takes, in average, 50 years before it's out from Baltic Sea. So this also sometimes explains why our measures are not seen immediately in the sea. It takes about 50 years to actually, in average, to see the difference. Well, what is often less cited is the fact that the Baltic Sea is probably also the best researched sea area in the world, with long continuous data sets and a state-of-the-art monitoring and assessment. This wide network of scientists and researchers remains the backbone of our work and is also actually quite unique in global terms. We are already being asked to share our experiences beyond our own region, and we should be prepared to do this also in the future. Needless to say that HELCOM has a lot to contribute, and not least in solving pollution problems burdening coastal areas in other parts of the world. Cooperation between trustworthy partners to improve our sea will be needed in any conditions. Unfortunately, eutrophication or sea pollution can't be suspended by geopolitical events or wars. We need to continue do everything that we can even in these circumstances. We neither have the luxury of being narrow-minded nor blind to new arising challenges which may risk our main task. For instance, increasing use of uninsured oil tankers without proper capability of ice water navigation is unacceptable and against any common sense of anybody who would think this rationally. At the same time, all we in the Baltic Sea region, not looking to the task divisions between organizations, all we must work to limit the fundamental physical risks of the current situation that I mentioned. The first step should be that the European Maritime Safety Agency should face this reality seriously and send more fast response capacity here to the Baltic Sea region immediately. We all need to be grateful to those pioneers who took on the task of saving the Baltic Sea at the time when the topic was not yet in our daily news and the general public was far from being aware about these things. Still, far-reaching decisions are sometimes difficult to achieve. If it wasn't for those visionary decision makers who took the decision about HELCOM decades ago, no one knows what kind of a sea we would be facing today. Dear colleagues, dear HELCOM veterans, I wish to thank those who have dedicated their times, some of you, your several decades, to HELCOM, the scientists, the policymakers, politicians, and of course, the members of the Secretariat the most. I believe we have among us today both former members of the Secretariat as well as former members of national HELCOM delegations and national experts. It is you who have made HELCOM into what it is, and we sincerely grateful for all the hard work you have put into this organization. Now it's our turn to make sure HELCOM develops in the needs of the 2020s, becomes a lively and forward-looking 50s taking organization and finds new great ways to be influential and crucial organization for the sea of our common interest. We indeed have a proud past, and today we are here to make sure that we will also have a truly promising future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. And as already Minister shared with us some facts that are worth reflecting and really are interesting to just grasp about the Baltic Sea, I'm sure we'll hear also a lot of interesting incoming three speeches that will be delivered by our three keynote speakers. And as a first, I would like to invite on stage the member of Finnish Parliament, Mr. Pekka Haavisto. Pekka Haavisto as well will tell us a few things to reflect in the next couple of minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Ministers, Executive Secretary, Ambassadors, Excellencies, dear fellow friends of HELCOM and the Baltic Sea, it's both an honor and a pleasure to be speaking here in the 50th anniversary celebration of the Helsinki Convention and HELCOM here in Riga. I don't know how did you spend your Easter holidays or Easter break, but I was driving actually from Helsinki to Kuroni and Spit and crossing over at Klaipėda in Lithuania. And I have to say that if you want to see something really nice around the Baltic Sea, I recommend you Kuroni and Spit and the Nida and all those villages that are there. We live in a time of a great transformation. Even in Europe, we are no longer part of the same security order we got used to after the Cold War. At the same time, we have an even more serious threat upon us. Climate change and the crisis in our ecosystems requires immediate action everywhere on the planet. The work of HELCOM is needed today and in the future. It's crucial both for the well-being of the Baltic Sea, but also for the security in the area and also in a broader global context. Well-being of nature is a prerequisite of the well-being of mankind. Dear friends, unfortunately, world politics and all the ongoing conflicts and crises don't take the environment into account. War and conflict have an immense effect on nature and the climate. We have yet to see what are all the environmental costs and implications of the war in Ukraine, the Russian aggression. Most likely the effects will also be reflected on the Baltic Sea as well. Russian aggression against Ukraine has also been bringing war closer to us. We know the potential tensions around Kaliningrad, and we have been witnessing the heat against Nord Stream pipeline and the damage caused to the Baltic connector between Finland and Estonia. What goes on in the Baltic Sea has an effect on the environment, but also on the security of the area. A stable and secure Baltic Sea would benefit all the coastal states, not to mention the marine life itself. Dear friends, the roots of HELCOM, as we know, go all the way back to the Cold War time. In the 1970s and 1980s, when almost all international relations between the West and the East were on ice, it was the Baltic Sea which brought us that time together. HELCOM was one of the first and one of the only forums to exchange information between the coastal states. The role of HELCOM being a forum for states from both sides of the Cold War cannot be emphasized enough. Looking back, the founding of HELCOM seems like a small miracle of the time. I doubt similar success could happen now in today's world. The fact that the Soviet Union could take part in HELCOM, share at least some of its information on the Baltic Sea, was crucial for the success of the HELCOM work. It must also have had a larger impact on the security and cooperation of the coastal states. Going back to the early history of HELCOM, we might ask ourselves if all the data given to the organization was reliable. In the early days, we perhaps viewed the state of the Baltic Sea and marine life through rose-tinted glasses. Now we know what is threatening us. I've always paid tribute to those environmentalists and marine scientists who at the very early stage raised the environmental concerns around the Baltic Sea. Actually, Minister Berzina was already making the reference to 1972, the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm. That was first world conference to make the environment a major issue. Unfortunately, I didn't travel to Stockholm that time. I was only 14, but my best friend, Kai, was 15 and he traveled to Stockholm. and he was very impressed. He was bringing actually the first, this kind of recycled booklet back to our school. And we were keeping it in our hands and we're thinking that this is the future. And that was the future, at least partly. In 1992, I had the opportunity to chair in a large forum called Our Common Environment, that time in St. Petersburg, where more than 600 environmental activists and scientists from all parts of the former Soviet Union participated. You could feel how the environmental spirit was coming out from a closed bottle in that forum. Today, we know how important public participation and the citizens' movements are for environmental awareness, and how citizens have also acted in a key role to push us decision makers forward on environmental decisions. Speaking about the Baltic Sea, the role of the citizens in the riparian countries has been and will be crucial in the future. Dear friends, even though cooperation with all the states around our Baltic Sea at the moment seems impossible, I believe that one day it will be possible again. For that day to come, we have to work hard and keep relevant institutions alive. The work of HELCOM could be the first step towards cooperation in the future. It won't happen today, most likely it will not happen tomorrow, but when the day comes, I hope that HELCOM will be there to continue its work with great energy. In the history of HELCOM, the Baltic Sea brought us all together. It can bring us together once again. Dear friends, the work of HELCOM and the spirit of the Helsinki Convention is still needed. I wish for an impactful next 50 years of work for the well-being and security of the Baltic Sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also as a next, our keynote speaker will be Karen Elleman, Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers. So please come on the stage.
Thank you very much, dear ministers, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. The ocean and the coastal areas of the world provide us with food, with energy, with jobs, with natural and cultural experiences. And the ocean is key to the achieving of several of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. However, our ocean at large is under pressure from climate change, from pollution, overconsumption, and loss of natural diversity. This, our Baltic Sea, connects us. 9 countries border the Baltic Sea and 85 million people live in its catchment area. The Baltic Sea is home to a rich cultural heritage and a unique marine and coastal ecosystem. We are all well aware that our Baltic Sea faces serious challenges. The Baltic Sea is severely impacted by pollution, eutrophication, and biodiversity loss. And the impacts of a heating climate add even more pressure and increases the urgency to act. At the same time, many of the solutions to climate adaptation and mitigation, renewable energy and food supply, lie in the ocean. I would like to start by congratulating HELCOM and everyone who is involved in the work of HELCOM. Congratulate you on all your efforts for a healthy marine environment in the Baltic Sea in the last 50 years. There is no doubt that HELCOM has played a crucial role on several fronts in reducing pollution, combating eutrophication, promoting an ecosystem-based management, and in providing data that underpins sound management. HELCOM plays a key role for the establishment and management of marine protected areas in the Baltic Sea. These areas help conserve biodiversity, protect habitats, and contribute to the sustainable use of marine resources. And I also would like to recognize the important role that HELCOM plays for providing and managing data. One notable example is the holistic assessments. These assessments provide us with invaluable data. This data is essential for the implementation of both national as well as international policies and commitments, such as the EU Marine Strategy Framework Directive. The Nordic climate and environment ministers, they have long emphasized the importance of safeguarding our oceans, especially in the nexus between ocean, climate, and biodiversity. And in 2022, the Nordic prime ministers adopted a joint statement on a sustainable ocean economy and the green transition. The prime ministers emphasized that, and I will quote them, "The marine ecosystems of the Nordic oceans are subject to multiple pressures. This calls for even stronger cooperation, an improved knowledge base, and more integrated and sustainable management." End of quote. The Nordic prime ministers also emphasized that they will seek to collaborate even more closely on issues relating to protecting the ocean, on ecological sustainability, climate resilience, and reduction of pollution, including the input of nutrients from land-based sources, and also that they will strengthen the Nordic dialogue aimed at sharing research and knowledge, including blue and green industries that are linked to the ocean. The Nordic Council of Ministers is committed to delivering on the Prime Minister's declaration for a sustainable ocean economy and strengthened cooperation on ocean issues. We are working hard on providing the best new information that is the foundation for political decisions. For instance, on climate change and management in stressed Nordic areas, also like Skagerrak, Kattegat, and the Baltic Sea, and how restoring ecosystems and deploying marine protected areas can help in adapting to climate change. We are also looking into how we can best reconcile ambitious targets for offshore energy with the continued production of food from the ocean at the same time as we are making space for nature. The transition to renewable energy is urgent, but the transition needs to be fair in order to be sustainable. And that is why we are also looking into best practices for involving local stakeholders and their interests. The UN has designated this decade as the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, a decade to stimulate global action and to create transformation. From the Nordic Council of Ministers, we are committed to contributing to this momentum for ocean knowledge-based solutions. And this means working with a variety of stakeholders to align research, investments, and initiatives around a common framework, so that we can jointly contribute towards a well-functioning, resilient, and sustainable ocean. So my hope is that our efforts, for instance, through the Ocean Decade, can also contribute to improved management and aligning with the work of regional sea conventions like here in HELCOM. The Baltic Sea faces a number of challenges that are interconnected. The Baltic Sea is host to many competing commercial activities at sea and is also negatively impacted by activities on land. The issues facing the Baltic Sea, like eutrophication, are particularly challenging because they are urgent, they are multifaceted, and they are interdependent. So this really calls for a balanced and a multi-sectoral approach. So I would like to highlight the important role that HELCOM has in solving many of these challenges. HELCOM serves as the main platform for cooperation between countries in the Baltic Sea region on environmental issues. And this collaborative approach across borders enhances the effectiveness of efforts to protect the marine environment, and it facilitates exchange of best practices and expertise. So as we look ahead for the next 50 years, it is evident that we have our challenges cut out. I take comfort knowing that we all share the vision for a restored and resilient Baltic Sea, and that we have learned in these last 50 years that progress can only be achieved in concert and in partnership. So we are proud of the past, and we look at a promising future. Congratulations, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Selman. So we are very happy to have here today as well with us Ms. Leena Mononen, Executive Director of the European Environmental Agency. So please as well come on the stage.
Thank you, Minister Brezina, Ministers, dear Excellencies, dear members and friends of HELCOM. It is with great pleasure that I join you today to mark this HELCOM's 50th anniversary. I am a Finnish national, so for me the Baltic Sea is our sea, Mare Nostrum, and now located in Denmark, in Copenhagen as Executive Director of the European Environment Agency. This sea is not only close to my heart, but also part of my daily work. The Baltic Sea continues to be under increasing impacts, as we have heard, from climate change and biodiversity degradation, catalyzed by eutrophication, pollution, land use, and resource extraction. In many ways, it is a very troubled ecosystem. But imagine, what would its state and future be like if there had not been 50 years of cooperation and dedicated efforts under the Helsinki Convention? HELCOM's work has significantly advanced the field of environmental protection of marine ecosystems. Over the last 5 decades, the wealth of data, indicators, and assessments produced by HELCOM has set an example at regional, European, and also at the global level. Amongst HELCOM's many contributions over the years, I would like to stress the importance of the HOLAS reports, the Holistic Assessment Reports, first published in 2010. These contain the core pressure, state, and driver indicators that are so vital also for the EU's Marine Strategy Framework Directive. While regionalization of the indicators has been a huge contribution to the knowledge base of the Baltic marine environment. HELCOM holds high-quality data on the Baltic Sea, with different working groups helping to gather information. And one of the organization's great achievements, I believe, has been its convening power, bringing together experts across diverse environmental fields and enabling pioneering work, including the mapping of the status of and threats to different species and habitats. In my long career as a civil servant, one of my first international exposures were, expert group meetings of the HELCOM on hazardous substances. So also important for my career in that sense, as for many others, I believe also in this room. HELCOM is a driving force in preserving the Baltic Sea delicate ecosystem and advancing overall environmental protection efforts. The agency that I'm working in, the European Environmental Agency, is an independent agency of the European Union. Our role is to inform policymakers and the public about the state of Europe's environment, climate, and wider sustainability issues. And in light of this, I would like to now say a few words about HELCOM and the EU. The European Union and HELCOM have really a long-standing partnership, and of course also now membership, with HELCOM playing an important role in facilitating the implementation of the EU environmental and marine policies in the Baltic Sea. In fact, before the EU memberships, most HELCOM parties already had regulations in place due to the prior adoption of HELCOM recommendations. HELCOM's strong standards have often served as inspiration for EU directives, particularly when it comes to issues such as urban wastewater treatment. In this way, HELCOM has actually helped in the implementation of key EU directives. HELCOM has also been instrumental in supporting the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive of the EU. The directive outlines the EU's approach to marine environment policy, and HELCOM's contributions extend to implementation. For example, it has provided critical inputs to the Framework Directive's common implementation strategy and has offered substantial assistance to member states. HELCOM's collaborative efforts among its contracting parties have helped tackle pressing environmental challenges in the Baltic by promoting sustainable fisheries, reducing marine litter, and mitigating nutrient pollution. These achievements closely align with the EU's environmental agenda, including the European Green Deal and the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, enhancing ecological resilience and supporting a greener, more sustainable future. Additionally, HELCOM's ongoing focus on marine protected areas projects demonstrate a proactive approach to ecosystem restoration and resilience, strengthening the environmental goals of both HELCOM and the EU. These initiatives not only directly contribute to the EU biodiversity strategy, but also reinforce the implementation of EU nature legislation in the Baltic Sea region. Last but not least, HELCOM's recommendations on shipping, maritime fuels, and port facilities have also set the high standards, paving the way for the EU to adopt similar measures and support the transition to sustainability in the maritime sectors. Our agency works across many different thematic areas, covering climate, environment, and sustainability, and what is clear from all our work is that the challenges we face are complex, interlinked, and systemic. And tackling such challenges requires, above all, collaboration. Collaboration across continents, countries, and regions over the seas, and collaboration across thematic fields of expertise and organizations. At the EEA, we highly value the excellent collaboration with HELCOM, making use of HELCOM's data and assessment tools, such as those addressing biodiversity and eutrophication. The EEA has produced insightful reports on contaminants in Europe's seas and on marine protected areas, and directly supporting, hence, the EU member states in implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Moreover, our Marine Messages report used assessment tools originally developed by HELCOM in its second edition, and we will benefit from them again in the third edition to be published in 2026. In order to enhance the exchange of data and assessments, regular meetings are held between EEA, our agency, and the regional sea conventions in European seas, including HELCOM. Our shared objective is to further streamline the exchange and management of marine data at regional and European levels, and to distill reports for wider uptake across the EU, including through our database called Wise Marine. The ongoing collaboration between EEA and HELCOM further extends to preparations of the upcoming reporting cycle, and we are deeply appreciating HELCOM's invaluable assistance in this endeavor. In many ways, through our collaboration, we have been illustrating the synergies and complementarity of our respective mandates and deliverables. To close, let me once again offer the EEA's congratulations on 50 years of excellent work by HELCOM and underline our agency's desire to continue the outstanding collaboration between our two organizations. Our close partnership, particularly on data and assessments, serves to help safeguard the Baltic Sea and its ecosystem for generations to come. Indeed, you have proud past, promising future. Thank you for your attention and looking forward to many more years and decades of fruitful collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to announce also that with us today we have Alan Haney, General Secretary of the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea, so-called ICES, as we all know. So please come also on the stage, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Congratulations to HELCOM on this incredibly auspicious moment. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you at this time. It's a great honor. And I want to share a few thoughts from the perspective of ICES of our common challenges and opportunities. So ICES is a Copenhagen-based governmental marine science organization meeting societal needs for impartial evidence on the state and sustainable use of our seas and oceans. Since our creation in 1902, we brought together scientists to address the challenges of the Baltic, the Atlantic, and beyond. We have the privilege of partnering with HELCOM in a wide variety of areas, and we look forward to continuing this collaboration. More than 6,000 scientists from our 20 member countries and many others are involved in our activities. Our system of scientific cooperation means that we can draw on great marine scientists from around the world to help address the challenges of the Baltic. ICES has long provided advice on fishing opportunities, including 19 annually in the Baltic. But fishing is no longer the only pressure on stock status considered in our assessments that require information on a changing ecosystem. Our HELCOM collaboration is of growing importance. Today is about dreams. We celebrate and reflect on the dreams of the past, and we dream of how we can achieve greater success in the future. In this spirit, I want to appeal to the everyday heroism of HELCOM and ICES to address the challenges of the Baltic. What I see is that we have the right people and institutions to solve our problems. Our challenge is putting all of the pieces together in an ongoing manner. How do we do this? First, we need to fully appreciate the heroic nature of our common purpose. We don't usually think of managing data, doing science, or being a bureaucrat as heroic duties, but they are. Together, the combination of data, science, and effective management is the basis for successfully addressing our greatest challenges. Over the past 10 years, HELCOM, together with ICES, have developed a system called the HELCOM Eutrophication Assessment Tool, HEAT. This system has served as a template for developing similar assessment products that are linked to hazardous substance databases also held in ICES Data Center. Actions like this help form the scientific foundation that we need. There's a great potential for HELCOM and ICES experts to work together to move forward during the next 50 years to reach favorable status for the key commercial fish stocks. This success will maintain the culturally important Baltic fisheries and related activities that provide income and livelihoods for numerous coastal communities. Our challenge, sustainably using and preserving the Baltic marine environment, is as important as any in the world. In a broader sense, working across nations to find science-based management solutions for our world is the central challenge of our time. 50 years ago, HELCOM was a bold idea, and we again recommit to its ambitions today. There's also great heroism in cooperation and collective action. We are making progress, but there's work ahead. Across the Baltic and our nations, across disciplines and our personal histories, the collaboration between HELCOM, ICES, and all of you enables us to break barriers to tackle the hardest problems of our age. Part of this challenge is supporting the heroes in all of us. Promoting gender equality and all forms of diversity is a central need of our community. We do this not only because it is right, but because it makes us stronger. This doesn't mean that all the change we want will happen overnight, but at ICES, implementing our gender equality plan is helping make ICES a more diverse and inclusive organization. At the same time, our stakeholder engagement strategy is broadening the ICES community to bring the right people to the table, together with HELCOM, to provide the knowledge needed to inform the complex trade-offs that we face. Today, both HELCOM and ICES are striving to support early career scientists. In ICES, our strategic initiative on the integration of early career scientists is thriving. We more senior scientists, those of us over 50, have started the effort, but the early career scientists have taken charge of all aspects of the initiative and is revitalizing ICES. Becoming more inclusive in all ways will make us better able to attract great minds to help meet our challenges, but these efforts need our ongoing support and commitment. Another challenge that we face is the reality that we need broader and more effective engagement across disciplines in both science and advice. The challenges that we face are fundamentally multidisciplinary and involve both social and natural sciences. Fortunately, both HELCOM and ICES have interdisciplinarity in our organizational DNA. Our joint ICES-HELCOM working group on integrated assessments of the Baltic Sea plays a pivotal role in delivering evidence for the Baltic Sea ecosystem overview. Social science is entering ICES advice through many avenues. Another area where we need to improve our collaboration is in connecting scientists with managers, both informally and formally. As we work to develop new approaches to interdisciplinary science and advice, we need to have repeated interactions between policymakers and scientists to help focus scientific work on the right questions. This will also help policymakers understand the limitations and uncertainty of science and enable scientists to better present their research in a useful and understandable manner. If you're a policymaker, I encourage you today and when you're at home to communicate with the scientists who you think are the most interesting people in the world. Vice versa if you are a scientist. Ask questions and listen. This sounds straightforward, but doing this consistently is transformative. Finally, we need to convert our words to action. Diligence and urgency are both called for. Built on a common vision that our challenges require teamwork and collaboration, we must go forward with a mixture of flexibility and determination. Being flexible requires us to be vulnerable as leaders. We're innovating a new path, and we need to recognize that we'll have to continue to revise how we work. Acknowledging our mistakes and making corrections is essential. Our biggest danger is not that we'll be too bold, but that we'll be too timid. We've all been entrusted by our countries, our citizens, and our children to address the challenges of the Baltic. We're at a pivotal moment where the challenges we face make it clear that business as usual is not an option. Climate change, the biodiversity crisis, food security, the new goals that we have of using the ocean to generate renewable energy all provide us with a choice. We can use science well, but we need to have the support to support and build our scientific capacity now to coordinate this work effectively over the coming decades. While I anticipate the next 50 years of HELCOM accomplishments, I have a strong sense of opportunity and urgency. Our time is now. Let us draw upon one another with vision and humility and leave a Baltic for our children that is better than the one that we find today. To the HELCOM Secretariat, community, and family, the ICES Secretariat, network, and family extend our heartfelt congratulations. Our biggest challenges and successes lie before us, and we're excited to work together as partners now and in the decades that come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henny. And also I would like to thank once again all our keynote speakers. I think with this we can completely say that this official celebration part is opened, and for more festive atmosphere, I would like to invite here our special guests. And in Latvia, we all know them very well, our ethno-pop band Tautumeitas. For those who are coming from other countries and maybe do not know so well our Tautumeitas, I will simply explain that they combine melodies and lyrics from folk songs with contemporary sounds and create really unique musical treasures and experiences. So Tautumeitas will perform for us 3 songs. So enjoy and let's hear and see this musical treasure.
Tiesa nemeliņi līgo, līgo, vecu ļaužu valodiņa līgo, līgo, vecu ļaužu valodiņa līgo. Jāņa naktī meitas gāja līgo, līgo, raganāsi vilkats esi līgo, līgo, raganāsi vilkats esi līgo. Jāņi, Jāņi šovakari līgo, līgo, kam tie Jāņi piederēja līgo, līgo, kam tie Jāņi piederēja līgo. Raganāmi vilkats sevi līgo, līgo, kam tie Jāņi piederēja līgo, līgo, tam tie Jāņi piederēja līgo. Skrien raganas čārsu gaisu līgo, līgo, nemanāja sētiņāja līgo, līgo, nemanāja sētiņāja līgo. Manu sātā celšam kaltā līgo, līgo, adatāmi jumti, jumti līgo, līgo, adatāmi jumti, jumti līgo, adatāmi jumti, jumti līgo, līgo, izskaptēmis pāris celtas līgo, līgo, izskaptēmis pāris celtas līgo, adatāmi nosēdurti līgo, līgo, izskaptēmi nosēgriezti līgo, līgo, izskaptēmi nosēgriezti līgo.
Hello. So you might know some Latvians, but this is what Latvians become when they get into the nature.
Mīmāra rotā Panama jumtu, meitiņu godiņu lūkodā. Kapu padziedāti uz akmeņa gavilēti, lai skan visi mežu meži līdz manām baliņām. Gana skaļi es dziedāju, gana skaļi gavilēju, taļu mani sarajiņas, lai balsai klausījās. Manim nevēlēja nedziedāti gavilēti, es dziedāju gavilēju, skaudjam sirdī ēdināju. Pavējami es dziedāju, pavējami gavilēju, lai vējiņas balsu nesa līdz manām baliņām. Ko vārds manim šeit dziedāti, kas pēc manis klausījās, klausījās, kas pēc manis klausījās. Citu tautu zemītei, man balsiņa klausītājs, klausītājs, man balsiņa klausītājs. Šim vakaram, gan biju dziedājis, gan gavilējis, gan mane šim vakaram, gan dažu netikli pakaidinājis, gan mane šim vakaram, gan biju dziedājis, gan gavilējis, gan mane šim vakaram, gan biju dažam žēl darījusi.
Laika mani mātes kurpes, laika mātes villainī.
Laika mani mātes kurpes, laika mātes villainī.
Tik vien laika vēl nebija sēsties tautu kamanās.
Tik vien laika vēl nebija sēsties tautu kamanās.
Nepļauš miežus rasiņai, gan ir laika saulītē. Nepļauš miežus rasiņai, gan ir laika saulītē. Neieš jauna tautiņās, gan ir laika mūžiņā. Neieš jauna tautiņās, gan ir laika mūžiņām.
Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim.
Ei, māsiņa, kad iedama pavasari vienei. Ei, māsiņa, kad iedama pavasari vienei. Pavasari tautu dēls viršu ziedu alutai. Pavasari tautu dēls viršu ziedu alutai.
Es nebiju uzaugusi, neprātā ņēmusies.
Es nebiju uzaugusi, neprātā ņēmusies.
Jau tautiņas naudu bēra pāri manu augumī.
Jau tautiņas naudu bēra pāri manu augumī.
Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim. Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Sadziedami mēs māsīņas, kamēr viena vietiņa. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim. Kas to zina citu gadu, kur mēs kura līgosim.
Paldies! Thank you!
Thank you. Thank you, dear. Thank you, dear musicians, for bringing us closer to nature, and about the nature, of course, we'll talk in the next couple of hours, even, I would say. As we already heard at the very beginning with this nice video we all were watching, there are plenty of challenges and problems in Baltic Sea, and still, unfortunately, I think we more often master and own Baltic Sea instead of treasure and love. And despite all that, we still have achievements in its protection worth celebrating. And in the next almost an hour, we'll be talking about these achievements and 50 years history of Baltic Sea protection. Of course, it will be brief history of HELCOM, let's say, and to squeeze 50 minutes in 50 years in 50 minutes is, of course, quite challenging, and that's why I need help here. And I would like to ask Andris Andrušaitis on stage. Andris is, as he says always, friend of HELCOM, but at the same time, he is former acting executive director of BONUS, the joint Baltic Sea R&D program, and also chair of the Baltic Earth Senior Advisory Board. Andris, it's very nice to have you here. As I said already, friend of HELCOM, and I would also say you are like tour guide for us for the next hour, like in unknown city, when you want to just run fast, but still manage to see the most important things.
A tour guide in a flying bus. Yeah. When actually my mouth is dry after this performance. I've been in their concerts, but never so close to the stage.
So, a small pause then for you. But anyway, I want to ask, what does it mean to be friend of HELCOM, and how you became friend of HELCOM?
Right, thank you. Thank you so much for asking this, because really my history of my private history, and we agreed that we will try to keep these 50 or how many minutes of history as personal, as private as possible. And I have a huge private history together with HELCOM. That's because on 1974, I just entered the university. I became a student of biology at Latvian University. However, I heard a lot about HELCOM because Estonian professor Harald Adam Wellner, one of the founding fathers of Helsinki Commission, was a family friend. And so I started hearing and seeing the papers and following the history of HELCOM from the very beginning. And then much later, in 2010s and 2020s, I was in charge, as you said, Sandra, for the BONUS, the Baltic Sea Research and Development Program. And actually, we managed, together with HELCOM, we managed to forge a duo, a tandem of the regional sea basin research program and the environmental program, of course. I think that was something unique, never done before in the world, and I'm very proud for that.
So you were personally and professionally very close to HELCOM since
Absolutely.
the very beginning.
I'm honored and humbled to be called a friend of HELCOM.
So, but I know that there will be 3 other, not only friends of HELCOM, but also people who had really experienced a lot of interesting things in HELCOM during their professional careers with you here on the stage. So, do we invite them right now?
Yeah, could you please help to invite
we really ask Peter Ehlers also to join us on the stage. Mr. Ehlers held various functions in HELCOM from 1981 till 2008. He was HELCOM chair from 1984 till 86 and 2000-2002. Also chair of the Maritime Committee in 87 and 97. Also head of German delegation from 83 till 87 and member of German delegation from 88 to 2008. Also chair of HELCOM Youth Forum, and about the Youth Forum we'll also talk in some time today, not in a minute, but a bit later. Thank you for joining us today, so also take the seat and please welcome with applause. Also, Miss Monika Stankiewicz will join us on the stage. Monika is Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention on Mercury and former Polish delegate in HELCOM Cooperation, also HELCOM Professional Secretary from 2006 till 2012, and HELCOM Executive Secretary from 2012 till 2019. Nice to have you here. And Miss Lilian Buss as well, we would like to see on the stage. Vice President of the German Federal Environmental Agency and former HELCOM chair from 2020 to 2022. Nice to have you. Thank you for joining us. So I think I will leave now Andris with his guests to recall the proud past in the next almost an hour, and you'll be really eyewitnesses of some events. You will share your personal stories because you are part of this history of Baltic Sea protection, this story,
right.
And we are very happy to hear about it.
This is a challenge, of course, and we agree that I will just give a little hints of the most important moments as we feel them, and then I will be happy to give floor to our honorable speakers. And the first, and we will go decade by decade. And the first one we called establishing HELCOM. And during this time, of course, we heard that there was a Stockholm conference in 1972. I believe that there was some activity going on, and some wise and visionary men and women were doing things in direction of establishing something like a convention and commission already before. We know how prudent and how slowly these big diplomatic things happen. But a convention was signed in 1974, and interim commission was established in the same year. And what is remarkable, And I think this is a signal, at least to me as a scientist, it is a signal that there was, and I know actually for sure, that there was a lot of scientific communication and collaboration amongst the scientists of the Baltic Sea, marine researchers already before HELCOM. Therefore, it was possible to start the periodic assessments and launch the first version of the Baltic Sea monitoring program already very, very shortly after establishing the interim commission, actually. Before I give floor to our honorable guests, I wish to share with you one slide. And you, I believe, how many people, I just wonder, how many people are in this room remember Tartu Melvesalo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least. Excellent. Yeah, Tartu was also one of the remarkable people I met in my youth. When I was I think I was already a PhD student at that time. It was still in Soviet times, close to the end of the Soviet times on this part of the Baltic. And Tartu was one of those. She was a professional secretary at that time. She was one of those who was frequently traveling to the eastern part of the Baltic Sea and investigating and working for the possibilities and opportunities to establish and facilitate the work of the Commission. But returning back to the 70s, I would like to give floor to you, Peter. You were there very early on.
Well, thank you. In the 70s, I was no longer a student, but I had started my professional life, and I worked in the Maritime Department of the Federal Ministry of Transport, which at that time, when no environmental ministry existed, that department was also responsible for matters of marine environment protection. And though I was not personally involved in HELCOM matters, or in matters concerning the Baltic Sea, I was very much interested in that and listened to what my colleagues reported, because I was born at the Baltic Sea, I grew up there, and I'm still living in Hamburg. And for all those who do not know that, Hamburg is closer to the Baltic Sea than to the North Sea. Well, as had already been said before, that was a time of new beginnings for environment policy. The Stockholm Conference we had, then the Global MARPOL Convention was adopted, the London Dumping Conventions, and regional conventions, Paris Convention, Oslo Convention, Barcelona Convention, and of course, the Helsinki Convention. And the Helsinki Convention, compared to the others, was really unique and innovative, as it included regulations for all the different sources of pollution. However, these regulations largely were very general, and they needed further specification, and this could only be achieved by continuous cooperation of contracting parties. And therefore, in the convention, the establishment of a commission, together with the Secretariat as an international body, was established. And this also shows that the importance of this convention, because we lived in the times of Cold War, and protecting the Baltic Sea was one of the very, very rare fields where the East and the West, and including Sweden and Finland as neutral states, were really willing to cooperate. And in the time, this became one of the, yes, I think, rare examples of cooperation within the CSCE efforts. This cooperation did not wait until the convention entered into force in 1980, but started immediately in 74. Started by establishing an interim commission, and the interim commission developed organizational decisions, which of course were necessary, established first contacts with other international organizations, especially with ICES, then established together with ICES a scientific group with more than 30 scientists from all over the Baltic, and they could then produce a first monitoring program and an initial assessment. This assessment was really work, and they concluded that work in 1981, and then this was the very, very first status report of a marine area all over the world. So it really was something very, very exemplary. Well, the interim commission also started some technical decisions, reduction measures, especially with regard to shippings. That was an easier task than dealing with the real problems of the Baltic Sea, because shipping matters, similar shipping matters, were already dealt with by IMO, and the interim commission could build up on that. And they could also build up on work done by others. That was the management system for joint combating oil pollution spills. There, the North Sea states had already done some work because they had already started some years earlier. But taking all in all, this was very helpful, and it helped the HELCOM when HELCOM began in 1980 not to start from scratch. Well, that is what I remember from the 70s. As I said, I was not really directly involved, but I had some very good information about that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, very much. And this brings us to the next decade. Something is happening with my machine. Can I have a next slide, please? No. No. I'm asking for 90s. Yes. Thank you so much. Right. No, sorry. History is running too fast. I'm asking for 80s, please. Yes. Learning to walk. Learning to walk. And again, this is already the fully fledged activity of the headquarters in Helsinki. The convention enters into the force in 1980. The general, and something interesting happens. The observers' rights are granted to several important organizations in this year, as we learned in the history. And among these organizations are United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, Intergovernmental Maritime Consultative Organization, which later became IMO, International Maritime Organization, and World Health Organization, and also the ICS a bit later, and the OSPAR Commission, Oslo Paris Commission, which is taking environmental care for the North Sea and North Atlantic, also became observers of the Helsinki Commission. And this is, I think this is not only the signal that HELCOM was following this open, holistic approach from the beginning, understanding that we are all part of the global ocean and all other things happening around, but also it's a signal of actually the reputation and the trust in the new organization that these big United Nations and other frameworks joined as observers. Again, I'm turning to you, Peter. Your memories about 80s.
Well, now it's a bit better for me because now, at the beginning of the 80s, I really became more and more involved personally in the work of HELCOM. Soon I became head of delegation, then chairman of the commission, afterwards chairman of the Maritime Committee. And of course, this was a decade where we started and we learned to walk. HELCOM at first, of course, decided on all these prepared organizational and procedural matters, established 3 committees to do the preparation for technical decisions, the Scientific Technological Committee, the Maritime Committee, and the expert group on combating, later renamed as Combating Committee. But much more than that was that an atmosphere, let me say, of trust, of reliability, of mutual understanding was created, including the willingness not to overload each other, but to be considerate what could be expected from each other. And that was not an easy task in the times of Cold War. And it only could be achieved by getting to know each other better, by establishing good personal contacts. And here it was helpful for us that we did not only have meeting sessions, but we had a lot of social events, receptions in the embassies, and especially evening gatherings in the Secretariat, in the premises of the Secretariat, which at that time were very, very small, so that people became closer very soon. And I remember many an evening which ended in singing together. Also German folk songs. However, then sometimes I had a problem. Colleagues from the other countries had much better command of the German text than I had. But I learned about that. Well, HELCOM then started taking the first decisions for reduction measures. Legally, those decisions which were taken in consensus were recommendations only, and that was criticized by environmental organizations. However, much more important than the legal form is the political willingness really to implement these decisions. And therefore, when I was a chairman, we tried to get a better overview about the implementation process, and we tried and encouraged member states also, if they were a bit hesitant, to regularly report about what they have done to implement these regulations. And this provided a basis for pointing out if, to our view, these implementation measures were incomplete, insufficient, and even today, I think, we all in international business have to do much more with regard to implementation, not always to think about new wonderful regulations, but to do whatever can be done that all these decisions we have taken internationally are really implemented. Well, to get the work more structured and more goal-oriented, in 1984, a medium-term action plan was adopted. 4 years later, expanded to a long-term plan. But I, as a chairman, thought that is not enough. I got the feeling that these three committees hardly had any contacts with each other. And there was a danger that they, in the longer run, would take a life of their own. And so I established regular meetings of the chairs and the secretariat, the so-called cash meetings, where we coordinated the work and where we also set concrete objectives. And we held these meetings in different member states. That gives us an opportunity to intensify our contacts with relevant government agencies and to raise their awareness of the importance of our work. And so this cash became more and more important as a brain trust and as an unofficial steering body. And that caused a problem. Not all states were happy about that. Not all member states were happy about that. They had some suspicion what was going on there, and later in the 90s they replaced that by heads of delegation meetings where all member states were present and could be present, but at those meetings they always presented the view of the government, whereas in our cash meeting we were a bit more open on that. But that's another development. Well, in total, I think in this first decade more than 100 recommendations were adopted. Many of these reduction measures which were decided on, however, were concentrated on very specific pollutants, on very specific sectors, and one could get sometimes the impression that that was piecemeal only. And when the North Sea states in 1987 decided on a 50% reduction of harmful pollutants into the North Sea, a similar decision was inspired 1988 by the Helsinki Commission, but this was a very, very difficult task. There were some member states who had severe doubts whether such a target could be really reached in concrete terms. And I remember the Polish minister who was skeptical until the very end, and even a remark by his Soviet colleague, forget about it, you will not be longer in office when this stuff has to be implemented, did not convince him. Nonetheless, in the very end, all ministers signed a Baltic Sea Declaration, and that declaration stated that all efforts should aim at a substantive reduction of the most harmful pollutants, for example, in the order of 50% as soon as possible, not later than 1995. Well, this wording is a bit soft. Nonetheless, it is a very challenging target, and it underlined the willingness to take bold steps. The more I regretted that in the following years, not always sufficient consideration was given to this target, and in the end, it was replaced by more concrete but less ambitious targets. But all that also is life, and we have to live with that. Well, at the end of this decade, you got a feeling that maybe the Iron Curtain would break down, or that we could overcome that by our cooperation. And then this became totally clear at a Prime Minister's conference on the protection of the Baltic Sea in Ronneby in Sweden in September 1990. This really was a historic conference, and I could say a lot about that. It really marked the end of the old times and the beginning of new times, but that is already leading into the next decade. Therefore, I will leave it as it stands now.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm amazed. How are you, after so many years, you remember those dates and years and things, what happened? Yes. I would invite a big applause to Peter Ehlers. Right.
Well, thank you, but that's my life, and that's our life, that we live for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. And this brings us to 90s, and we call it the new era. And I think you might guess why. In the beginning of 90s, there were still troop transporters visible in the streets of Riga and Tallinn and Vilnius and other cities. And in the very early 90s, people in my home city, Riga, were building barricades to protect the new governments, actually. But and then suddenly there were several new independent states on this side of the Baltic Sea. And I must say that Helsinki Commission was very agile and smart and quick to capitalize of this new situation. And already in 1990 there was the Ministerial Meeting in Ronneby with the Baltic Sea Declaration, which established the joint comprehensive program, which is, as Peter just told us, this was the beginning of the new approach, a very targeted approach. In that time we were targeting on the point solution mostly, but at least we didn't touch much the diffuse pollution, the eutrophication, but at least we had this list of the hotspots, and HELCOM was very determined to get rid, to extinguish those hotspots in the drainage basin of the Baltic Sea. And of course, the revised Helsinki Convention has to be adopted because of the new times. And it was, with this new situation, it was possible to look closer to the coasts, which were kind of closed before that. And the first assessment of the state of the coastal waters was issued in 1993 already. And there was a Gdańsk Declaration for mobilizing resources for implementing of the joint comprehensive program, and actually also 1990s saw the first establishing of the marine protected areas in the Baltic Sea. That was something I think rather hardly imaginable before. In those times, and these were still times when Helsinki Secretariat people, we had many meetings, but Secretariat people were coming with their own paper, printing paper I mean, and with those huge Olivetti computers to those meetings. And that was also the time when the monitoring program was substantially revised. And in one of those meetings, work group meetings dealing with the revision of the monitoring program, I met a young Finnish marine scientist, Juha-Markku Leppänen, with whom we worked afterwards. We argued a lot, but I was always admiring Juha-Markku's determination and smartness, and sometimes his cunning, but always his leadership. And may I ask a video of Juha-Markku, please, on screen.
Dear esteemed participants of the HELCOM anniversary celebration meeting, it is with great honor and joy that I extend my heartfelt congratulations to HELCOM on reaching its remarkable milestone of 50 years of activities. As a member of the HELCOM Senile Club, I have been invited to think back the early days of HELCOM work. In fact, I have followed HELCOM since its inception, and I have had the honor to work together with the two extraordinary Mama Baltica. Already during the interim commission time, I had pleasure to have coffee table discussions with Ritva Kostakov-Tsempe. Later, Terttu Melvasalo presented the HELCOM World of Monitoring and Assessment to me. Reflecting on my journey with HELCOM, I have, of course, forgotten most of the serious and funny details of the work. But everyone's enthusiasm, the jovial working atmosphere, and especially colleagues turned friends remain etched in my memory. In the proud past, there were some events which might be impossible to organize in today's reality. The intercalibration exercises at sea. Research vessels, big and small, from all the coastal states of the Baltic Sea gathered into the same spot at the sea, took water and bottom samples, and then analyzed them on board. The sampling, analysis, and comparison of the results were of course highly interesting, but the memorable part was the great parties organized in the ports. Later, the work in EC Mon and Monas and at the Secretariat was more serious, but fun and cheer were not missing. Ladies and gentlemen, there were some memorable statements of the contracting parties I would like to mention. Firstly, it is not acceptable that HELCOM work includes projects operating with external funding. It is meaningless to develop indicators to assess the state of the Baltic Sea. It is impossible to define environmental target values, and our authorities will never ever accept that approach. And finally, it will never be possible to assess the state of the Baltic Sea as a whole, not even by sub-region. Well, James Bond was right. Better never say never. Baltic Sea Action Plan and the latest HELCOM assessments are the perfect proof of that. During HELCOM's 40th anniversary celebration, I said that I'm dreaming to see the Baltic Sea again as it was in the 1950s when I was a child. Clear water and ecosystem functioning in balance. So contracting parties, hurry up since I'm already 74. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I wish a great and excellent future for HELCOM in its challenges to reach good environmental status of the Baltic Sea.
Yes, thank you indeed. Many years later, Juha Markku once said to me, "You know, Andris, I think I'm getting old. I tried a red cabriolet and I liked it." Well, but we are now in 2000s, embracing the ecosystem approach. This is a title for this decade which we gave. Because indeed, during these years, a part of Helsinki Convention getting into the full power, the new convention, but there was this historic meeting, the Ministerial Meeting, joint meeting of Helsinki Commission and Oslo Paris Commission, which was a great deal of that was devoted to embracing and accepting the ecosystem approach as the main line. Well, maybe you can disagree with me, but for me at least, as a scientist, it was very important. I remember that many people were afterwards quoting these documents surrounding the Ministerial Meeting in Bremen in 2003. And I must say again that we are still fighting a little bit with the practical meaning of what and I have been asked many times, please, could you explain what it means to have an ecosystem approach to fisheries, or to have an ecosystem approach to maritime spatial planning, or have an ecosystem approach to managing the protected marine areas, or organizing the sustainable harvesting of the ocean energy, and so on and so forth. So this is still a bit of a hot potato, but I think we are on the right track. And during those years, which actually culminated, of course, with the adoption of the Baltic Sea Action Plan in 2007, and I really graphically remember that November in Krakow in Poland, when this meeting took place. Many people were disappointed because during the discussions the text became more and more, it lost its round corners, but it was how it was. And then following the Juha Markku Leppanen's this list of the never-evers, I remember that somebody from the European Commission stood up at the meeting and said, "Don't touch fish. This is not your business," in those times, yes. But one of the remarkable persons who were in charge for a moment during 2000s was my country woman, now member of European Parliament, Professor Ines Vaidere, and I'd be happy if we can have Ines's intervention on screen.
Dear friends, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to address you remotely. I wish I could have been among you in Riga, because the time from 2002 to 2004, when I was chair of HELCOM, was very memorable and fruitful. specifically working together with Executive Secretaries Ostoyski and Brusendorf, as well as many other excellent people. It's a great honor for me and for Latvia that this celebration takes place in Riga. Back in 2002 to 2004, right as Latvia and Baltic states were joining the European Union and NATO, taking up the presidency was both a challenge in the political context of Europe and a great opportunity for Latvia to make a meaningful contribution in addressing the environmental challenges of the Baltic Sea region. The early 2000s was a remarkable time, not only during the Latvian chairmanship. I would like to highlight just a few of the key milestones. I was very happy to chair the first joint ministerial meeting in Bremen in 2003. It was significant because all parties acknowledged the need for an ecosystem approach to the management and sustainable development of marine environment, which is now one of the main overarching principles. The following year, in 2004, we hosted the 30th anniversary conference of HELCOM in Riga, just a few months before the historical EU enlargement. It changed the legal landscape of the Baltic Sea, as it then became an internal EU sea, excluding the waters under Russian jurisdiction. I remember back then having an optimistic outlook about involving Russia in the protection of the Baltic Sea. There was very good collaboration with the staff in the technical meetings. However, I experienced that at the ministerial level, they opposed many of the commonly agreed ideas. Russia very quickly proved it does not care for the environment and common Western values, but only for using the Baltic Sea to threaten and provoke its neighbors. Lastly, perhaps one of the most important achievements of this decade was adoption of the first Baltic Sea Action Plan, and eventually, in 2009, the EU Strategy of the Baltic Sea region, which was the first of the macro-regional strategies in Europe. Overall, during the decade, as Latvia and other Baltic Sea countries joined the EU, HELCOM became the platform of the region. Indeed, there lies its importance, because environmental protection requires a common approach. Going forward, we should continue to address the issue of the large amounts of chemical weapons dumped into the Baltic Sea after the Second World War. I started working on it already in HELCOM and continue doing it now in the European Parliament. I wish you a very fruitful event. Thank you very much.
Yes, and this brings us into 2010s, and we call it Seeking the Wholeness. Mostly because, of course, the first event which we marked for this decade, which is the first holistic assessment issued, which was a huge, huge achievement. I think, again, this is something which never happened before on a global scale, that based on the indicators and based on the idea of everything is linked to everything, we were able to assess the whole ecosystem. Unfortunately, as it was then back in 2010, and it also continues now this year, or was it last year, when the third holistic assessment was issued, there are still quite many red spots on those maps in our holistic assessments. Nevertheless, this was the decade of wholeness, embracing the wholeness. I would also support this because of the joint establishing the joint group, the working group on maritime spatial planning between Helsinki Commission and WASAB. And I remember in those times the or maybe a little bit earlier, but around those times, the office of VASAB, it's an intergovernmental organization whose name is Visions and Strategies around the Baltic Sea. This group is mostly working with the regional development and spatial planning in our region, and VASAB was kind of developing its approach to maritime spatial plans, and also HELCOM was doing something independently. And this was, of course, all because we started feeling in those years that the space of the Baltic Sea is becoming tight. We are actually running into the deficiency of space in the Baltic Sea for all the activities which we are willing to do there. And it took a bit of commuting between Riga. The office of VASAB was in Riga in those years. It took a bit of commuting between Riga and Helsinki until this group was established. These are my personal memories. One day when I write my memoirs, I will remember this. Anyway, the Baltic Sea became the first region in the world to protect 10% of this area, and it became a special sewage area under International Maritime Organization, and there was in litter, and the second HOLAS. And in those years, the executive secretary, actually before that, the professional secretary, and later the executive secretary of Helsinki Commission was Monika Stankiewicz. Monika, your memories.
Thank you so much. And Madam Chair, Excellencies, Executive Secretary, and esteemed participants and friends, I'm really honored to be invited to speak today. And thank you to Latvia for hosting us in this beautiful and cozy venue and offering us this magnificent musical performance that has uplifted our spirits. And when traveling to Riga, I realized how greatly and positively the work in HELCOM impacted me professionally and personally. I believe HELCOM had a glorious past and will have a thriving future. And as Andris said, yes, there are many milestones that fit under the theme of wholeness, let's put it that way. And since this is a bit of an informal part of our celebrations, I'm of course tempted to offer you completely subjective reflection of HELCOM work in the past decade and have 3 points. They are not really related altogether with anything except that there were really great women in the center of all these developments. So firstly, in this decade, major work was undertaken to further develop core indicators used in the holistic assessment. And these environmental indicators are really not easy material for any intergovernmental negotiation in general. And because they require such a great deal of scientific consolidation to start with, and even more so this is true for any environmental indicators with threshold values, and they are commonly considered in the world as impossible to agree. So it's remarkable that parties in HELCOM were able to agree on a sizable set of such core indicators. It must have been 2016 or 17. And imagine, you know, all of that, it was agreed vis-a-vis the EU Marine Strategy Framework Directive, so there was really a weight in this decision, and there were 26 indicators used in HOLAS 2. And I still remember this meeting of heads of delegation at which this happened. The meeting was chaired by Marianne Wenning from the European Commission, who made us in the Secretariat, or at least me, feel a bit taller and part of a bigger world. It was really tough negotiation, but also a very successful meeting where best available science served best possible outcomes. And thanks to each and every head of delegation, I would say HELCOM at its full strength. And it's great to see that this work has continued. So now in HOLAS 3, above 50 indicators, simply amazing. And here I would like to make connection to Minamata Convention work, for which I'm now dedicating my professional career, so all the data related to mercury could actually be of direct relevance and use in ongoing process of assessing effectiveness of the Minamata Convention. But secondly, I was so thrilled to see the thematic assessment on economic and social analysis in HELCOM in HOLAS 3. And did you know that the first ever HELCOM social environmental economist was employed in the Secretariat in the previous decade, and it was a brilliant expert and woman, Heini Ahtinen. And one could say it was long overdue, still it was so refreshing and inspiring to see HELCOM expanding its area of expertise and carrying an interdisciplinary work as part of HOLAS 2, and we were lucky to have at our disposal some major outcomes of bonus research program. And thirdly, the decade was marked by major achievements in reducing nutrient inputs from shipping. In 2011, the Baltic Sea became a special area for sewage from passenger ships under IMO MARPOL Convention, and many were involved to make it happen under remarkable leadership of HELCOM Maritime Working Group Chair Roland Eriksson from Finland. And never before the industry, and in this particular case, the shipping industry, cruise shipping industry, was so much involved in HELCOM work. And then in 2016, the Baltic Sea was designated by IMO as a NOx emission control area under MARPOL Convention, and again under the leadership of another amazing woman and chair of the Maritime Group, Ann Pettersson from Sweden. And processes leading to NECA and sewage special area are examples of what I would call a good governance and exemplary cooperation on national level between environmental and maritime authorities, among HELCOM parties, and between two international organizations. And then, dear colleagues in the Secretariat, I cannot conclude without saying how privileged I was to work with you, so much dedication and talent in one workplace. I mentioned to some of you, I have a little regret from, let's say, my times. I feel that I could have done more for your well-being, for keeping the balance between the work and the personal lives. And I would like to close my remarks by calling on parties to continue this important work, and of course all observers to keep engaged, and I wish you best of luck. And I mentioned only a few great women. There were more. You remember Anne-Christine Brustendorf, the first woman executive secretary of the convention. And then many women chair and heads of delegation and different groups. But there were also great men that made contribution to HELCOM work in the past decade. So please do invite me when you will be celebrating 60th birthday, and I will have a sequel. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Monica, so much. Do you remember 10 years ago when Helsinki Commission was celebrating the 40 years? What was the strapline? What was the slogan?
Well, thank you for prompting this, and I'm as old as the organization, so the only obvious choice was life gets better after 40.
Life gets better after 40. Indeed it was, yes. Now we are 50 and life's getting better and better. We call the present decade, 2020s, we call it resilience. Because things which the black swans, the things which could be thought unimaginable and unprobable, just happened during this decade. But as we hear and as we all believe, Helsinki Commission is going strong and going into the future. Marianne, you have been chaired during this current decade. What are your reflections and notes about the current times? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And hello, HELCOM family. I really feel it's like a family. So I started with HELCOM in 2020, actually early March of 2020 was the first time that I actually was part of the HELCOM family. I was introduced into the family, and I remember that was March 2nd, 2020, because that was my birthday. And it was interesting. I met a lot of people. We had these side conversations. and I was really excited starting the HELCOM Chairmanship, the German HELCOM Chairmanship in July of 2020. I have a background in marine biology. I heard so many great things about HELCOM, so I was really ready to start. And then I brought a sign that was actually at the lunch on this March meeting, and it said, milkshakes yes, handshakes no. So HELCOM already prepared us that there was something coming. And as you all know, by mid-March of 2020, the world shut down. So the entire chairmanship, the German chairmanship, was actually online. So I did the chairmanship together with two of my co-chairs. One was with the Ministry of Environment in Schleswig-Holstein, Mr. Ulrich, and then the other co-chair in the second year was Mr. Röpke from the Ministry of Environment and Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. It was really interesting and important for us to do this together because we have 16 federal states in Germany. Those two border the Baltic Sea. We want to work and are working very closely with them. They have to implement measures that we are talking about and adopting in HELCOM. And so the three of us then walking through this chairmanship online for the next 2 years. Actually, I have to say it worked pretty fast that we are able to switch to video conferences, that we are able to actually work on a new format how to do our hot meetings, but everybody who is involved in HELCOM knows that there are many, many, many meetings a week, a month. So we had to switch all these meetings to online and virtual meetings. It worked well. I think we were all really happy about it because one of the big projects we had in those 2 years was to update the Baltic Sea Action Plan and actually adopt it in a ministerial meeting in fall of 2021. And so we were really lucky because we had this really small window. We were actually able to meet in person. So we had our ministerial meeting in Lübeck in fall of 2021. And there we were actually meeting, actually most of the ones, the HOTS and the professional secretaries from the Secretariat, I met for the first time after a year and a half, after negotiating this Baltic Sea Action Plan in many, many meetings. So we were able to adopt it. And with that, we adopted also a lot of really good other documents. One you see here is the Regional Action Plan for Underwater Noise. Another one, we also published the Climate Change Fact Sheets. Also, we developed a science agenda. So these were like just a couple of highlights and documents we adopted together with the Baltic Sea Action Plans. And then we thought, okay, so we're getting slowly out of the Corona crisis. We're starting working on HOLAS, preparing HOLAS 3. We're also trying to push the topic forward about munition in the Baltic Sea. We're also trying to set the topic of blue carbon. And also what was interesting is we also talked about how we will work in the future together in HELCOM. And we said, okay, a lot of the people who work in HELCOM also have families. We want to save time for travel. We also want to save travel costs. And most importantly, we also want to save CO2 emissions. So we decided to moving forward that about 2/3 of the meetings will be online, and then we meet in person a couple of times a year. So that's what we decided. Everything was going more or less smoothly. But then February 2022 happened. Russia started the war against Ukraine. And then we had another crisis, a whole new geopolitical situation. We had to, in many discussions, decide how we move forward with our topics with HELCOM. Actually, I thought we mastered the situation pretty well. We found a still temporary solution to this new geopolitical situations. We were able to move forward. We were able to move forward with HOLAS 3, the preparation, but then also with implementing the just adopted Baltic Sea Action Plan. And we also talked if the structure of HELCOM is right to actually implement it. So we had very good discussions. We were moving forward, although we had very difficult geopolitical situation. And then in June of 2022, we also had the UN conference in Lisbon in Portugal, which was excited. We were able to present a couple of the good work we have worked on for the last 2 years in HELCOM. And then I handed over the situation in HELCOM to Latvia, who took over. And as I heard from this morning, you had a very successful ministerial meeting here in Riga. You were able to adopt your resolution, so congratulations from my side on that. I just want to reflect a few things why I think HELCOM was able to move through these multiple crises over the last 2 years and why they were able to weather this pretty well. So first, and I think we have heard that from previous speakers, we have an excellent secretariat with excellent professional secretaries, with an excellent executive secretary, people who support the entire HELCOM community. And I can say it for myself as a HELCOM chair, really supports the HELCOM chair. I mean, I've never seen like the notes to the chair so well done. So I was well prepared to each and every one of those meetings. I think this is one of the big things why we were able to move forward with HELCOM. And I think at this point in time, I would give you a big applause. Thank you.
Sure.
I also think HELCOM was successful because all the member states, which are at times are really tough negotiators, but also have the same vision of a healthy Baltic Sea environment that really unifies them. And that was actually the reason why we could move forward through these 2 crises. Then, of course, all the outstanding and very dedicated experts, many of them here are in the audience, who work in the multiple expert groups and in the multiple working groups to move the scientific basis for HELCOM forward. So thank you for that. Also all the non-profits and observers and stakeholders who are involved in HELCOM, they also were on board during these 2 years over the last 50 years. So this was also, I think, one of the ingredients why HELCOM was strong starting 2020. Plus also all of them who supported HELCOM, and we heard many voices in the last 2 hours who support HELCOM since 1974. Such a long time. I was thinking, what did I do in 1974? I started elementary school. And so this is quite impressive that so many people stayed on board, so many people supported HELCOM over all these years, and I think this is part of the success. Maybe lastly, I think we all know that we have to face probably many challenges in the next decade and maybe in the next decades. We already heard about the biodiversity crisis, the climate crisis, the pollution crisis. We still have in many parts of the world geopolitical challenges and crises. Also, HELCOM has to implement the Baltic Sea Action Plan in this decade. We heard that until 2030, and of course also implement the Sustainable Development Goals. But I think HELCOM will be able to do it. It has all the instruments they need. They have all the people they need. And I think with that, I think you can look back at a proud past and look forward to a promising future. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Lilian, for the inspiring words. And indeed, we are looking forward, and we are not afraid of the future. But we are, and we will hear it after the break. Actually, we must be involved with the next generation, those to whom we are leaving what we have done, for good or for worse. And Peter, when we were preparing for this anniversary event, we had a nice discussion. You shared some very, very interesting memories about the youth, the importance of youth and the previous attempts and activities to establish the new youth wing of the Helsinki Commission. Could you share it?
Well, I think, and I'm totally convinced, making further progress in the protection of the Baltic Sea crucially depends on getting the younger generation, and that means the leaders of tomorrow, excited about that. In 2004, the HELCOM decided to regularly organize a HELCOM Youth Forum. That came about as when I attended that meeting, I was accompanied by an international group of PhD students from Hamburg. And the day before the meeting, we had organized a seminar with students from Helsinki. And the students developed proposals for the protection of the Baltic Sea, and those proposals also included the establishment of such a youth forum. The youth forum should take place alternately in the different member states. And we in Germany were prepared to organize the first meeting. And when no one volunteered, we also organized a second meeting. And after some years, even a third meeting. However, no other member state followed this example, and eventually this initiative broke down and died away. And the more I am pleased, as I heard that now a new impetus has been given, though in a slightly different form, but I think you should do whatever you can to get the young generation much more involved in all these issues.
Before our dear ladies and gentlemen, friends, family members of HELCOM, before our moderator allows us to go for the coffee break, a networking break, of course, I wish to thank very much Lilian Busse, Monika Stankiewicz, and Peter Ehlers for these reflections. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and I think a very big applause to Andris Andrušait. It's good. That's such a huge job. And it was really, really interesting to go through such a rich history. And as we learned that actually HELCOM, if we compare it with a human, started to think about having kids at 30, right? It sounds so. So about the young generation, and we call it young generation, but it will be specialists and new scientists and new policymakers under the 40, let's say, that will meet us after the networking break, as Andris announced. We will have this coffee break one down floor under, so it's -1 floor if it's officially called. There will be refreshments and coffee, and also please enjoy the exhibition that will be here outside on the screens. It will be beautiful images from the Baltic Sea. So enjoy, and we will wait you back here at 5:15, so we have almost half an hour for that, with the interesting discussions about the promising future and also the present. See you in the half an hour. Thank you. So welcome back, everyone. It's very nice to see you back. We continue to celebrate 50th anniversary of signing Helsinki Convention. As we already heard at the end of the previous session, that there is very important to think also about the young specialists, young scientists, young people being involved in environmental protection. And this next session we dedicate to the discussion about the bright future from the very young professionals' perspective. And this is why I would like to invite also on stage the host of the next discussion, Silva Laure. She is the Vice Chair of the Baltic Sea Region Committee of Youth Representatives. And Silva will be the perfect person to host this discussion because she is involved in many interesting topics as well regarding Baltic Sea environmental issues and have really interesting experience also with the young scientists, young policymakers, young specialists from different sectors. Hi, Silva, it's nice to have you here. And yes, big applause to Silva. You know, we heard that life starts after 40 in previous sessions, so I know that all your guests are under the 40, so I don't know if they agree that life starts under the 40, and actually that maybe after the 40, the best part, they would say, still now that we are living with our passion, with our dedication, with our knowledge, there are mountains we can move, you know, when we talk about the environmental protection.
I mean, that is a very, very philosophical question, first of all. And I think that today's panel, with the panelists, we will unveil whether they are in the right spot.
You know, when they are very passionate for what they are doing. But I know that the title for your discussion is Are we fit for the future? And anyway, something about the fitting the future and fitness. Could you explain us what does it mean to be fit for the future?
Well, to be perfectly honest, when I was invited to facilitate this conversation on marine environment and whether we are fit for the future, I was very kind of baffled by how much we have to think about and discuss in under an hour. And I still think that that is also a question that will gain the answer with our panelists as to what is fit and what is the future and whose future is it that we're looking for. And yeah.
So a lot of philosophical as well questions, but I hope you will be very precise and very concrete. So let's also greet your guests and also hear what you have to say when you start your topic as well. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandra. So it is truly an honor to facilitate this conversation today. I hope everyone enjoyed the much-deserved coffee break and is feeling refreshed for this new panel. Now, for a bit of an orthodox suggestion, could all of you look to your left for a little bit and to your right for a little bit and see what distinguished gathering we have here today? With these sharp suits and crisply ironed blazers that we have on today, we certainly do look the part for this celebration. But let's not let the formality dampen our spirits as we embark on exploring the promising future ahead. In the previous discussion, we delved into the vibrant history of the Helsinki Convention, spanning 5 decades. Now, as we commemorate the past, we also symbolically open a new chapter for what lies ahead. And as I already said to Sandra, when I was invited to facilitate this discussion, I was kind of chuckling at the whirlwind of a topic we have to cover in so little time. And what does it mean to be fit? Are we going to be looking for some cardio exercises that work best for those working in the marine business, or what are we discussing? Also, whose future is it that we're discussing? Is it the seas? Is it HELCOM's? Ringed seals, perhaps? There's a plethora of possibilities. But I suggest that we try to simplify it. And we simplify it by thinking of HELCOM as a person that is celebrating their 50th birthday. And in this occasion, we're celebrating everything about them, their experiences, habits, both delightful and perhaps sometimes annoying. And just like with any gathering, we have a diverse crowd here today, starting from family to friends and those in between. For this panel discussion, we've invited the next generation, the inheritors of current successes and challenges regarding the Baltic Sea. It is clear that the policies and actions we implement today will shape how future generations interact with our sea. So what is on the minds of young scientists and activists in the Baltic Sea region? What are the pressing issues of today, and what's their outlook on the future? To delve into these discussions, we have 5 new generation speakers with a variety of backgrounds, all deeply invested in the current happenings of our sea. So without a further ado, let's warmly welcome to the stage Aurelia Armoskaite from the Latvian Institute of Aquatic Ecology, Mika Josephine Jonsson-Gerke from the Worldwide Fund for Nature Sweden Youth, Lisa Clemens from the German Oceanographic Museum, Reagan McEnroe from Nature and Youth Sweden, and last but not least, Stanislav Kostolski from the Baltic Sea Region Youth Forum. So thank you all for taking the time to be with us here today. It's always wonderful to bring to the conversation such a variety of perspectives, but to kind of scour the grounds of who we are and what we are representing, I would like each of you to highlight what do you deem as the most pressing issues regarding the marine environment of the Baltic Sea? Of course, through your specialities and activism endeavors.
I think it's really complicated to pick one topic that is deemed to be the most important to change right now, because the Baltic Sea is a big ecosystem and everything interconnects. So I think it's really difficult to just pick one, because I think there are multiple factors that need our whole attention to it. So I think we should not pick one, so instead we should pick a multi approach to everything.
Well, I completely agree. As an activist, I believe that we should follow the holistic approach to the whole problem. We should not focus only on the environment or on the transformation of the industry towards green future. We should also include such factors as navigating the social change that corresponds with the economic transformation, green transformation, or however we want to call it. And I feel that every topic, the economy, the environment, the social issues, are all interconnected, and we should take it as a whole and try to navigate to the safe harbor that is green and sustainable and fair future.
Yes, so what I think is that we need to go to the source of what's damaging our sea, the Baltic Sea, like the mining sludge and other ways that's running down to our sea. And I'm not a person that really knows much about the sea as a non-biological or other such, because I'm studying political science. But I really do care about mining and other waste that goes down to our sea, and that matters for me.
Honestly, Mika, I have to disagree. I believe that those of us who study political science are among the best equipped to deal with what Silva described as a whirlwind of topics in not a lot of time, which isn't just true for a panel discussion, but is true especially if we're supposed to be fit for a future marked by 2030, 6 years from now. That being said, I think that, at least from my perspective, there are 2 massive problems which we need to address and really not hide behind. It's the issue of eutrophication, both the long-term impacts of 100 years plus of eutrophication in the Baltic, which we're continuing to worsen, and the issue of overfishing. Without these incredibly vital fish who make up the central role in so many trophic systems within the Baltic Sea, we can never hope to restore any aspect of it.
Here. I completely agree. That's the funny thing about being at the end of the row, isn't it? Yeah. And I also completely agree that political sciences, social scientists, we might not know. So I work at the Institute of Aquatic Ecology, right? Which a lot of people are like, oh, you're a biologist. No, I'm a social scientist. I study planning, and I think we, as people with a social sciences background, sociologists, geographers, we also have knowledge about the sea that's really important. And interdisciplinary knowledge is what's gonna help us overcome all these challenges. We need to pool all of this knowledge together. It's not just biology. And I also want to add to Lisa's initial comment, and that there's a lot of things, and it's really difficult to start somewhere. But in a way, people are on land, right? Where we do so much, and then it all ends up in the sea. So I think we have to really address what's happening on land, like eutrophication, the root cause on land. So I think one of the things that's really like a pressing issue, was your question, is human activities, the increasing populations, we have an increasing impact. We've got agriculture, nutrients, wastewater running, and I mean, yeah, but we also got climate change, and we've got changing processes on land that will increasingly affect the sea as well. So I think climate change is also a really, really important one, and a really big challenge.
And now to follow up one completely open question with another completely open question is, how do we find balance between the values we extract from the environment and the negative impacts that we cause?
Wow, who wants to take that one first? God. I think what you lifted, Orly, is what we really do have to believe, and wholeheartedly believe, in every aspect of policy, in every aspect of the finance sector, as every stakeholder, is that we do need to focus on what we are doing on land. We do need to focus on cross-sectoral approaches, both to mitigating the damage we've done to the Baltic, but also in hoping to continue to live off of it. HELCOM has done fantastic work, which you don't really hear about too often, unless you're here. For instance, work in rural water management. These are not efforts that the average person might think is immediately connected to mitigating the pollution and the degradation that we've seen in the Baltic, but it is. We need to have that cross-sectoral approach, and we need to also be sure to integrate science into everything we do, from restoration to environmental impact assessments of offshore wind. We need to make sure that science is the backbone and the heart of every action we take anywhere near the Baltic.
I totally agree. And maybe I open a hot topic, but in my opinion, I think we don't need to find balance, because in the end, everything has an common goal. It's establishing a healthy Baltic Sea that's sustainable. We have different reasons why we want it, but in the end, we have the same goal. So I think it's sad that it's approached like with antagonists. Like you have the politics or the companies that want profit, and on the other hand, you have scientists and conservationists, and it feels like it's played out as two parties, but in the end, we're just one party. So we should pull together, and should not find balance. We should start working together to go to our main goal, for whatever reason it is.
Yeah, but I think it's really difficult though to see this, isn't it? Because when for instance we establish marine protected areas, right? We're restricting something, and that's
are the MPAs really restricted?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends.
Because again, like it's like, oh, MPA is always for the conservationists, so you close off a small habitat, and they're like, oh, it's bad for the fishing people because they can't put in their net there. But if we close off small areas, they're protected. The fish stocks will go up again, so there's more fishing capacity for the fishermen. So it's one and the same, it's just different reasons.
It really is, and I do feel, especially in the topic of fisheries, is that we've not only traditionally excluded fisheries as a stakeholder from the idea that this has been some sort of in-between. They're not part of traditional agriculture, and they're somehow also independent from the environmental movement, as though, especially demersal fisheries, as though these are not people who are wholly, distinctly, intimately aware with the fact that we are running out of fish. That's the end of that sentence. But we really can promote, especially for the stakeholders in the audience and those of you who work with stakeholders, the idea that investing capital, investing time, investing energy, investing policy into ecosystem-based management of our fisheries and of every other marine resource is an investment in our future, in food security, in energy security, in sovereignty for the Baltic states amongst, a plethora of geopolitical crises that we're seeing. It starts with making sure that we can actually live off of the resources that we have. Not in terms of fish meal, which the majority of Baltic herring turns into, not in terms of the fact that we're letting non-Baltic countries own the majority of the offshore wind farms, but when we, like Lisa said, when we work together, it sounds very High School Musical, but it's true. When stakeholders really do join together, and when we achieve the collaboration which HELCOM has been such a spearheading for so long, we actually do invest in our futures.
Coming back to the question of bringing balance, I believe that balance should come from responsibility. And we all have the responsibility to make the Baltic Sea region green, sustainable, safe, so on and so on. And we should not be afraid to point a finger at a persons, people, groups of interest that are polluters, that are bringing Baltic Sea region to the instability or so on. And maybe that's a radical point of view, but as young people, I believe we should be radical in what we are saying and doing. But without responsibility and without consequences for breaking the responsibility, we will not move on as a society in our goals to making our common interests, like the Baltic Sea, truly safe.
Well, thank you for these wonderful insights and reflections on the complexities of finding balance or lack thereof between our environmental values and the impacts we generate. And now perhaps it's time to delve deeper into the practical side of environmental management. And building on what was already said, also Anders Andersheits in the last panel talked a little bit about the ecosystem approach and how difficult it is to even explain it, not even talking about the management and everything that comes along with it. How do you think we will manage to make the ecosystem approach to management and the concept of ecosystem services work in real life in the Baltic Sea region?
I think one of the big questions that we have to tackle in order to really implement ecosystem-based management of any resource, whether it be on land, in the sea, or somewhere in between, is a question of how we subsidize and to whom these subsidies are going. We have a lot of discussions about, there's the big companies and the small-scale fishermen, for example, or the big industrial agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. In order to implement and create incentive for ecosystem-based management, we need to ensure that and secure funding for the people out there who are already doing it right. We can't continue to sink finances, federal finances, international finances, into practices that we know are not only not helping the environment, not only harming them, but also not generating massive turnover, which is possibly, if we're young and saying what we want, if we're radical, like Stanislav said, which are That's the main focus of many sectors, at least the finance sector. However, fisheries and agriculture are not the largest and most profitable industries in the Baltic, and yet they move enormous amounts of subsidies in terms of fuel and fertilizer. We can shift that. We can take a focus where we say we reward those who do not over-fertilize their farms. We can help small-scale fishermen meet not only the demands of the recently passed Fisheries Control Directive, but also have safe and clean boats with which to not only generate food, whether it be for human consumption or not, but also keep cultural significance alive. So I think we really do have to look at the capital in order to reward those who are already doing it right and hopefully allow ecosystem-based management and low-impact sectors to expand.
We know that the regulation of capital will not happen on its own. That's why we need to take actions. You need to take actions as governments, as people who actually right now have the power to do that. And I think that the steps should be taken as fast as possible to provide that the big companies, those who have money from polluting our sea, polluting our environment, they should face the consequences of being irresponsible towards the common good as is the environment. And I believe that, of course, the time was yesterday, actually, and there's no time better from yesterday than today. So, well, yes, coming back.
Okay, I think that we can't focus on the short-term solutions and that we need to ensure healthy ecosystems, because it's better to fix the problems now than doing long-term solutions rather than short-term solution that will cost the society, the companies, and the politicians more tomorrow than today. I think that the society will also make the economical gain by not putting in so much money now than tomorrow, because it will cost them more and more the longer we wait. And I think both the society, companies, and politicians need to think that it will cost more tomorrow than today. And we need more biodiversity to fix this. So we can't start mining in the Baltic Sea, for example, because we don't know how the consequences will be. How it will influence the sea, the fishes, and the nature in it. And I think we can't make the same mistakes as we do on land with all this sludge and the mining waste that already comes to the sea. How will it affect if it's in the sea?
And I think we need to take action now, action really fast, and also actions that are science-based. I'm a marine biologist, so that I'm part of 2 amazing HELCOM groups, and I see all the experts taking part on this, and they're doing amazing work. They're dedicating their whole life in it, and they're doing the HOLAS reports, and they're doing a lot. And there is science-based results or indicators. There's a lot that science provides, but it needs to be also more actions that are based on the scientists who dedicate all their life to the Baltic Sea and who see, like, I see every day the trends in the Baltic Sea. I see it, I work on the with the harbor porpoises, and I see how they're boycotted, how they're emaciated, and I think we provide knowledge, we provide solutions, but it does not feel that there's big steps towards us. There are small steps, but there's bigger steps toward the sides with the profit. So I think there should be also steps towards the side of the scientists or the conservationists.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's because to me also ecosystem-based is got a lot to do with science and the observations and of the ecosystem, and that you base your decisions on these scientific findings, scientific evidence, right? Whether it is perhaps observations from marine biologists directly, or if it is, in most often case, I think it's quite important that it's translated through like an interdisciplinary lens, so that you have evidence and data that is then analyzed and presented to be understandable for the audience that is going to read it. And I think sometimes that's the issue, that there's knowledge, there's data, but it's not going anywhere because it's just, you know, it's hard to understand. Science is really hard. It's really hard to read for some people, you know, when you step out of your own discipline.
Yes, that's true, but I think that's what I like at HELCOM so much, because you have the amazing secretaries that you get all your information to them and then translate it into...
Yeah.
Yeah. So they translate it for us.
Yeah.
And give it to the working groups and to the ministries. So I think that's really, it's amazing about HELCOM, because you can give you...
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that, I mean, HELCOM is not only a massive intergovernmental body, which is radical just in its nature, it's one of the, I mean, as we heard many times today, and with good reason, at the forefront of any marine science. HELCOM has massive data assessment muscles and has done critical work, which I think we'll come to later when we discuss ocean literacy, in making vital data accessible. What we need is for other sectors to make use of this. And there are, beyond even HELCOM, I mean, there are so many ways in which we can integrate other stakeholders into science, citizen science, as well as engaging, for example, fishermen in monitoring of the porpoise. We can engage people with local knowledge in how we develop planning. We need to treat science as a stakeholder, because otherwise we'll never be able to create a market for these ecosystem services, because we won't know what they are.
I believe that the governments have all the resources to start transforming our economy and our society as a consequence of this towards more greener, fairer, and more sustainable reality. And the only thing to do is take action, take responsibility for the action, have the courage to actually do something that is science-based, that you actually know what to do. You just have to do it.
And also do it now, because we're talking about the future, but we all know the future does not exist. The only thing that's actually existing is the now, and we're not the future, we're the now. So we need to take actions now.
Yeah, and we'll never be like 100% confident, will we? Like there's always be a little bit of uncertainty. It's just
It will
being
be
aware.
less than 0.05.
Reagan already introduced sort of the topic of ocean literacy that we wanted to cover as well in this panel. And to put it into very, very basic and simple ways of thinking, when young scientists, or scientists of any age for that matter, talk of the sort of nitty-gritty details of their work, and it is received by a person who does not find themselves circulating in the informational field of marine environment on a daily basis. If a great part of society is not made aware of what is going on with our sea and why we need to facilitate changes when troubles come around, I imagine it gets pretty hard to do anything about it all. And that being said, how do we make sure that in the future ocean and climate literacy is promoted in the Baltic Sea region and developed, of course? And furthermore, do you think that there are any specific contributions that HELCOM could make already parallel to the ones that they are making? Yeah, what could be done further to ensure that this becomes better?
Well, like Lisa and Orly mentioned, we're talking a lot about how can we do this for the future when you can say that there is no future. What we can also say is that we're not the youngest generation. This is a panel of people who we've been lauded as young experts, but this is a room full of people with kids, maybe even grandkids. It's just that our generation is the last ones who can act. And so what I implore all of you is to also take the chance to get involved with engaging children. Climate change and every machination of the Baltic Sea, you can be studying it for your whole life. But if you start as a child with being exposed to what is going on, if you talk to school children and say, hey, algae, they're like plants, but they also kill other plants. Not to dumb down what all of us are doing and dedicated our lives to, but to present these as an entry-level concept. And I do believe that HELCOM has a unique opportunity, if for no other reason than it's a gathering of so many states with so many different curricula. But we could unite around this. And I think that this is, it's an encouragement to all of us. Get involved, find other youth organizations, children's organizations who represent these future generations, and teach them.
I think it's important, yes, of course, with the small children, but to go maybe an age class upper, go to the students, because most of them already decided to be part of the science team already, or decided to be politicians and want to go into the future or take part in HELCOM or similar institutions. I think maybe go to the universities, send people there, or go take lectures or online lectures. We're in the time of the World Wide Web. We can be anywhere at the same time. So I think that would be easy to go to the students. And when I was a bachelor student, I heard of HELCOM, but it was only like, HELCOM exists. That's it. What is HELCOM? What are they doing? So maybe put some information to the students who already decided to be part of this and to get them engaged and make HELCOM noticeable for them. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the data that HELCOM provides is just, it's open, it's there, it's dependable, you can use it, access it, and I completely agree. As a student, I wish I had known, like in my bachelor's, I wish I had known or somebody taught me that there's this load of data. There you go, explore, go ahead, QGIS, go for it. Because back in the day when I was doing my studies, my bachelor studies and master studies, and my master's was in marine spatial planning, my geodata courses were all to do with land data. And I find that ridiculous now I think about it. What is that? We have so much good data that you can play around with and study.
I have this observation about activism in Generation Z, specifically online activism, that it is heavily oriented towards educating ourselves and educating others. And I have seen many accounts that belong to the activist groups, that belong to the many types of collectives, individuals, that focus on providing knowledge about being an activist, doing stuff, and also important topics that we as young people are against and we are protesting against, or, And I also observed that this knowledge fulfills the hole that public education system leaves for example, climate education or many different types, but let's stay focused on the lane. And I think that if the governments would really take action towards the general idea of fighting against climate change, that the activism, the online activism, the education would shift towards many more specific topics within educating ourselves about climate. And some of those accounts could shift towards ocean literacy. Someone could start posting online about, I don't know, forests, peatlands, and every kind of ecosystem that is endangered, and the actions need to be taken care of. But as I said, when there would be no need for educating our fellow people in our generation, we would shift towards more concrete, more specific topics, and we would follow the gaps in the education systems.
I must say that I am a little bit ashamed of myself because I haven't heard of HELCOM since 4 weeks back.
But this is the reality at times, and we have to recognize it. Yeah, sorry, continue.
And for someone who doesn't really think about the ocean that much, but still are a nature friend, and I think that we need to be more on social media, especially for the younger generation, younger than us, because we are the social media generation, the iPad kid. Like, we never use newspaper, we don't watch the TV, if it's not Netflix or something like that. And I think we need to start wasting money on social media and clips on that, so we can see what you guys are doing and get it on the recommended For You page on TikTok or Reels on Instagram. But I also think that, as we do in WWF Sweden Youth, is to do to schools to teach them about vegan food and how to be a healthier, eco-friendly person. I think HELCOM needs to start to do that, to teach us younger generation and older generation to how to be a better person to our climate, to our sea, and what we can do.
Also, one thing, if I may add, I think that the need for self-education should be in every generation, not only in the youngest. And I think that the public institutions, each and everyone, not only HELCOM, failed in putting themselves in the online world. Because, well, maybe we as late millennials and early Gen Z people, we still manage to, catch the institutions where they are, for example, here in Riga. And I fear that we as a generation, we have soon our eclipse, and the new generations will come after us that may not catch the world as it is, as good as we did. Sorry if that sounds ageist or something, but I feel like I am aging. And maybe it's the talking points of the older generation. But I really think that the public institutions should really set themselves for the even younger generations. They should focus on people that are 10 years old, that are 12 years old, that they should approach them in education, in many, many things. So if the new generations reach the age of bringing themselves into activism, they will already have the resources and will know where to find people that will actually help them, like HELCOM.
Yes, and we have very, very little time left, but I want to ask this. That's fine. I would like to just bring up this one last question in just 2 sentences, really. from those who know of this best, I would like to ask you about something that goes over the realms of the Baltic Sea, and that is the EU Nature Restoration Law and the adoption or lack thereof. This seems to be an extremely relevant topic for the major youth organizations that work on biodiversity topics in our region. And while, as I said, it overarches the confines of the Baltic Sea, how do you perceive the implications and potential impact of this law? And moreover, why should stakeholders in the Baltic Sea region specifically take note of its significance? I know, Reagan, you're very passionate about this subject, so...
Guilty. The first thing with the nature restoration law is that, to all of you, you have to be ready for it to fail, and you have to be ready to act anyway. Because while it is true that it would have incredible significance, legally binding significance for what we have detailed in the Baltic Sea Action Plan, it isn't the only pledge that our member states have made. So we need to fight tooth and nail for that it does go through for the ministerial, but we also have to remember that we've pledged and we've promised, from everything to the Habitats Directive, to the Paris Agreement, to lovely little coffee chats that we've had downstairs, that we're actually fighting for our environment. Remember that and act.
What can you say after that closing?
Yeah.
Well, I won't take long because I will be repeating myself, but I think that the current generation of politicians failed to take the holistic approach to this topic again and treat the ecosystems, the social actors, the economy as a whole. And we now face a backlash in our society, and I believe that without strong actions, actions that are really brave and broad, we as a political class will fail to deliver these European programs.
And I think it's important to, again, mitigate between the opposite parties, like the Profit Parliament Conservation Party, because, and I have the feeling a lot of agricultural institutions of fishery students have the feeling that when we implement the law, that they're going to lose a lot of benefit, which is actually not true. And I think we need to emphasize this, that no one is going to lose anything, that everyone is going to gain a lot when we are able to implement this.
Thank you very much. I think the panelists deserve a round of applause. And while the panelists were pondering over the matters discussed in today's panel previously, it was understood that due to a lack of time or certain onstage jitters, as one might call them, some things might be left unsaid. And with this in mind, we have developed 9 short recommendations from us to you, which should be seen on the screen as we speak. Is it? It is. And as we draw our next generation panel discussion to a close, it is important to emphasize that both frustration and admiration for all that is happening comes from deep care and love, as sappy as that sounds. I think from what we have talked about, it is clear that the next generation is eager to take part in your conversations, whether it is by listening in, by inquiring every once in a while, or, as we hope we did today, softly suggesting some things. We are very proud and thankful to HELCOM for all the hard work that has been put into preserving our RC for the past 50 years. and making sure that we can witness its ever-changing nature alongside you. And we hope that we can collectively make sure to pass this pleasure on to the generations that are the next ones, the upcoming ones, the succeeding ones, and to top it all off, ones of the evermore as well. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you for your open ears and millions of patience for listening to all this. And with this, the educated, not so small kids table of the 50th anniversary of HELCOM is giving the microphones and stage back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Silva Laura, as well, for moderating this discussion. Thank you. So we heard a lot that something that will happen in the future depends on what will be done right now or won't be done right now. And that's why our next session will focus on the present, and the main question on which we will answer is, where do we stand now? And this speech will be given by two HELCOM main representatives, Rüdiger Strempel, HELCOM Executive Secretary, and also Jannika Haldin, HELCOM Deputy Executive Secretary. So please take the microphone, the floor is yours, and welcome.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, we know it's late, but we can't possibly let you go without asking one essential question, and that question is, of course, so where do we stand? After 50 years of HELCOM, where do we stand? We've just heard many inspiring remarks about HELCOM. We've taken a walk down memory lane, reflecting on HELCOM's proud past. We've listened to some thought-provoking views on the future of HELCOM and the protection of the Baltic Sea from the next generation. And having done that, I think we can all agree that we've come a long way and we've achieved a lot. In some cases, in fact, as noted by you, Marko Leppänen, we've even achieved the impossible, or at least what was deemed impossible back in the day. But have we achieved enough? And what, for that matter, would be enough? Well, enough would mean achieving our HELCOM vision of a healthy Baltic Sea environment with diverse ecological components functioning in balance, resulting in a good ecological status, and supporting a wide range of sustainable economic and social activities. Enough would be achieving good environmental status, or GES. But we haven't. Not yet. And one of the reasons we know that is because we undertake periodic assessments of the state of the Baltic Sea, the so-called holistic assessments, or HOLAS in HELCOM speak. So exactly what was considered impossible like 30 years ago. The third and most recent of these assessments, or HOLAS 3, has just been completed. The report was published last year, and it contains food for thought. Allow me at this point to ask Jannika to tell you more about HOLAS 3 and share with you some of the knowledge and insights we've gained through that assessment.
Thank you, Rüdiger. So, my name is Jannika Haldin, and I was lucky enough to be the coordinator of the HOLAS 3 assessment.
I'm glad you see it that way.
The third holistic assessment shows that the pressures on the environment, from eutrophication and from hazardous substances, from resource extraction and the introduction of non-indigenous species, all remain above sustainable levels. We can also increasingly see the effect of climate change on the Baltic Sea, and this is something that is likely to become more prevalent also in the future. These pressures are a direct consequence of our human activities, and we've heard a lot about that here today. And these activities are activities that take place at sea, but they are also activities that take place on land. So it's not enough that we look at only the marine environment. We have to understand where the pressures are coming from in order to be able to fix them. Now, these pressures in turn affect biodiversity and impact the whole ecosystem. And as a consequence, the assessment shows us that there is inadequate status of biodiversity and the food web across the entire length and breadth of the Baltic Sea. There are only a few biodiversity indicators that show acceptable levels, and of those only in a few areas. These persistent unsustainable human activities, they threaten habitats, they threaten the populations, and they threaten the functioning of the ecosystem. It's an ecosystem on which we depend. And they increase the risk for further degradation by reducing the overall resilience of this ecosystem, so that it's more sensitive to future changes, such as climate change. But while the results of the assessment reflect the consequences of many decades of unsustainable use that HELCOM was established to prevent, the results are not the only aspect of the assessment that I would wish to bring to your notice today. Because as an endeavor, and we heard this from Juha Markku as well, holacracy is extraordinary. And that is largely thanks to all of the national experts that have showed amazing dedication and put a lot of work into this assessment. And also to our very dedicated colleagues at the HELCOM Secretariat. Sorry. Now, this is the most comprehensive assessment of the Baltic Sea that has ever been produced. Almost 1,000 experts were invited to take part in the review of the results. And over the course of 9 months, the HELCOM Secretariat processed 3,000 comments on these products to ensure that they are robust and can actually be used for management. And this is a key in the work that we're doing, not just to let everyone know what's going on, but also how can they take that into action, how can they make that actionable. Never before has our ecosystem understanding been better. And for the first time, this assessment strives to actually link together information on activities with the pressures and the status, so that we understand how the socio-ecological system functions. And it takes a leap towards a truly holistic approach that we haven't been able to do in the past. From millions of data entries through the 59 indicator reports, 14 integrated assessments, and 5 thematic assessments, all the way to the State of the Baltic Sea summary report, all of the HOLAS material is made publicly available, and interested parties can access the information at the level that makes the most sense to them. So we have also tried to make this information accessible to those that actually need to use it. But one of the most important messages that this assessment actually can provide for us is that when we have the right measures and when we implement them, they actually work. It's the first time that we can show that there is a concrete link between the measures and the change in status. Now, we can see this because we see a downward trend in some of the indicators that tackle pressures, and these are more directly linked to our human activities, so we see a change in them before we see it in the ecosystem as a whole. We see a downward trend for hazardous substances, and we see downward trends in the input of nutrients, for example. That said, there is, of course, a lot of work to still be done. Pressures at sea don't recognize our anthropogenic borders, so this kind of regional approach is key. And they also don't experience one of these pressures at a time. Rather, the ecosystem is experiencing all of the pressures all the time at the same time. And this is why we are not expecting to see changes in the status of the ecosystem at the same speed as we see it with the pressures. But it also means that we need to implement measures for a broad set of pressures at the same time to really see a change. And this brings me to the second important message that the State of the Baltic Sea report has provided for us. The work of HELCOM over the last 50 years has been instrumental in securing the positive changes that we can see, not to mention the fact that it has made it possible to see any changes at all, because without the kind of data sharing and information sharing that we have between the countries, we wouldn't be able to track changes in the Baltic Sea environment at all. Now, when there is a will, there is a way. And I think many of the speeches that we've heard here today has shown that throughout HELCOM's 50-year history, there has been a strong will. Now, what that will has been directed towards has changed over time. And that needs to be taken into account also in the future, because we need to direct it to where it does the most good. But when there is a will, there is a way. And the relevance and the value of tackling challenges together under the umbrella of HELCOM is likely to only increase in the future.
Thank you very much. So you can see the picture is mixed. On the one hand, and we all know this, our Baltic Sea is not in good shape. On the other hand, a silver lining is discernible. Firstly, as Jannica said, HOLAS 3, like all its predecessors, in itself constitutes a remarkable achievement. And as a result of this, we now have a better understanding of the nature of the problem and the state of affairs than ever before. We know enough to act. Never let it be said that we don't know enough to act, because we do. And we also know that if we act in concert, based on that knowledge, we can make a difference. We can fulfill our HELCOM vision. So really, all we need to do is do it, right? Except, of course, it's not that easy. It's not a matter of just throwing a switch. We're faced with a complex issue, or in fact, a complex of complex issues. Taking appropriate reaction requires a plan, an action plan. And this, of course, is where a 2021 Baltic Sea Action Plan comes in. That plan, with its 199 actions and final target year of 2030, is our roadmap to progress on the way to good environmental status. We're now roughly, not quite, roughly at the halfway mark, and implementation is progressing reasonably well, though there's a distinct discrepancy between joint actions and national actions, with the former advancing more speedily than the latter. So we have a sound scientific basis, we have the requisite knowledge, and we have a plan. But two other elements are required for success: determination and tenacity. If we are to achieve our ultimate goal, we cannot and we must not lose momentum now. And we must stay the course and step up efforts until we reach our destination. Now, that would be a tall order and would be very challenging at the best of times, and of course, these are not the best of times as we battle a triple planetary crisis against a backdrop of geopolitical upheaval. But we have no choice, and there's no time to waste. In closing, I'd like to quote Secretary John Kerry, who at last week's Our Ocean Conference in Athens, Greece, said, "In a race against time itself, even our current ambition is not enough. Our commitment must keep growing, and we must still accelerate." If we do that, and HELCOM's proud past makes me feel confident that we can, HELCOM and, most importantly, the Baltic Sea will indeed have a promising future. So let's go out there and do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for these inspirational words, and it's so nice to finally hear that we know enough to act, because usually they're saying we don't know enough and we have lack of knowledge. It's really nice that Baltic Sea has so much data and so much knowledge we have about the Baltic Sea. But the Baltic Sea has a lot of stakeholders and different organizations working hand in hand together, and they all want to congratulate HELCOM today in this 50th anniversary. And we will dedicate the next half an hour for people coming from different organizations representing different stakeholders and giving these congratulation remarks. And as a first, I would like to ask on the stage Gun Rudqvist from Baltic Sea Center at the Stockholm University. She is head of policy and wants to say a few words also for HELCOM. Please.
Thank you so much. It's an extreme honor to be here, and I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, the researchers at Stockholm University Baltic Sea Center. And of course, we will say congratulations, as all of us have been done. The researchers, they've been key, a really key element in bringing scientific knowledge to HELCOM as such an important actor. And I would like to say something about Baltic Nest Institute, because its director, Bo Gustafsson, is sending his best regards, and we would have liked to be here, but he was previously engaged. Already when the Baltic Sea Action Plan was supposed to be developed in 2007, there was a project called the Swedish Mare project, led by Fredrik Wolf at the Stockholm University. They happen to have, in a broad consensus of many researchers, the necessary tools to support a sophisticated assessment of the maximum nutrient input that could be allowed into the Baltic Sea in order to achieve the eutrophication targets. And by this concept, that really kicked off the development of a scientific decision support, which was channeled through the Baltic Nest Institute. And it's going on after 17 years. And its director, Bo Gustafsson, he likes to tell you all that without this action plan, it was a groundbreaking thing. And it was a groundbreaking thing to quantify on a scientific basis how much nutrient inputs that had to be reduced. And if we wouldn't have done this, and if HELCOM wouldn't have been such a strong actor, the situation in the Baltic Sea would have been much, much worse. So cooperation, the dialogue, it was such an important part of this. And I would say that the HELCOM's contribution has not only been to the environmental issues. That would have been enough, of course, but it has and it continues to play such an important role in bringing the countries together. And by doing this, increase in dialogue is also paving the road for future and better legislation within the EU now for presently. And at last, another strength of HELCOM is its approach to bring stakeholders together. We come from academia, but all the stakeholders in society. HELCOM has proven a really key actor in having an open dialogue and bringing us to the table to get all the views on board. So thank you for this, and we would like to contribute to another, maybe not 50 years, because I hope we're done by that, but a lot of good years. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gun, so much. And I would like to invite here also Bodo Bar, Secretary General of Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference, also giving us some inspirational words, probably. Please, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, esteemed members of HELCOM, distinguished guests and fellow advocates for the Baltic Sea. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to bring you today the best greetings and wishes of the Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference on the occasion of celebrating the milestone of signing the first Helsinki Convention and the establishment of HELCOM. Even if essential goals, what we always heard today, that we have all set ourselves have not yet been reached, or not to the extent that we would like, one thing remains fundamental on a day like this, and I can only repeat what has been said already several times. For 50 years, HELCOM has exemplified the power of multilateral cooperation in addressing the complex environmental challenges facing our region. We have made significant strides in promoting the sustainable development and preservation of the Baltic Sea ecosystem. You, HELCOM, and your partners have worked tirelessly to combat marine pollution, promote biodiversity conservation, foster sustainable maritime practices and safety, contribute to combating climate change, and find solutions to the challenge of removing sea-dumped ammunition, to mention only a few. You have worked with dedication and passion to achieve your goals and made progress even in extremely difficult geopolitical situations, be it during the Cold War, in the beginning of and now facing Russia's unprovoked, unjustifiable, and illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. From the early days of its work in the 1990s, the BSPC has repeatedly referred to the results of HELCOM's work. Since the start of the 2000s, when the BSPC attained observer status at HELCOM, at that time under the chairmanship of Professor Peter Ehlers, you have been one of our closest partners. Responsible ministers of the presiding states, the chairpersons of HELCOM and the executive secretaries inform parliamentarians. They regularly report on the results of HELCOM's work at the annual conferences, as last year in the German Bundestag, Federal Minister of Germany Steffi Lemke, and the Standing Committee and Working Group meetings, as Rüdiger Strempel just a few weeks ago at our Brussels meeting. Since the early 2000s, our 3 observers at HELCOM have submitted comprehensive reports on the work of HELCOM to the BSPC every year. In almost all of our resolutions, we refer to the work of HELCOM and call for the broadest possible implementation of HELCOM's objectives by the governments of the BSPC member countries. And we don't only ask to implement it, we also ask them to report 9 months later what they have done to pick it up for the next year and to push this again. The parliaments have always been on the progressive and ambitious side of implementing HELCOM's goals. For many years, parliaments in the Baltic Sea region have placed great importance on involving the younger generations in our discussions and decision-making processes. I am therefore particularly pleased that the young generation has been so intensively involved in this event as we have just experienced. This is reminiscent of the extremely successful, lively and well-founded HELCOM youth forums of the past, which are still fresh in my mind and which had been mentioned by Professor Ehlers in the former round table. And let me mention one more aspect. Very few people realize that when nothing is visible, because nothing is happening, HELCOM's work is particularly successful and comprehensive. More than 20 years ago, in a tremendous effort that was strongly supported and promoted by the parliaments, it was possible to enforce and implement far-reaching measures to strengthen maritime safety in the Baltic Sea based on binding agreements under international law. And Heike Imhoff and Peter Ehlers know that very well and remind that in each detail. I have been following HELCOM's work now for 45 years, since the first Helsinki Convention came into force, and have been deeply involved in it for more than 25 years. From the experience of this time, only one demand, and this had been said several times this day, can be derived with regard to the objectives of HELCOM. Implement, implement, implement. And accompany that with holistic assessments and reports about the status of the implementation as you are doing now. Only then we will have a chance to make things visible and to create awareness in a greater publicity. We express our sincere appreciation to all who have contributed to the success of HELCOM over the past 5 decades. Unwavering dedication and tireless efforts have been the driving force behind collective achievements. I'm confident that HELCOM will continue to make meaningful progress in safeguarding the Baltic Sea environment. Due to Russia's ongoing brutal and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine and the current geopolitical situation, close and united cooperation between the democratic states in the Baltic Sea is more important than ever to achieve our goals of protecting the Baltic Sea and realizing the goals of HELCOM's current action plan. Beyond that, it is crucial in these times that all efforts are made to ensure that the Baltic Sea remains a sea of peace. The Baltic Sea Parliamentary Conference wishes you all the success and support You need to continue significant and groundbreaking progress in protecting the Baltic Sea and far beyond in marine policy and ocean protection. Congratulations to HELCOM. Congratulations on everything you have achieved in the past 5 decades with your highly committed work. May our partnership continue to thrive as we strive towards a peaceful and sustainable future for the Baltic Sea region and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and it is our pleasure to have with us also Karole Durusel from OSPAR Commission. Please come on the stage as well.
Dear HELCOM Chair, distinguished ministers and high-level representatives, fellow observer organizations, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the OSPAR Commission, it is my honor to extend our warmest congratulations to our esteemed colleagues at HELCOM on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Convention. Half a century ago, the Baltic Sea coastal countries came together to establish a regional platform to protect the Baltic Sea from all sources of pollution, to protect biodiversity, and to promote the sustainable use of its marine resources. Many of these issues were identified by OSPAR's predecessors, the Oslo and the Paris Conventions, that also entered into force in the early 1970s. This commitment to tackle common environmental issues and responsibility towards marine environmental protection is something that HELCOM and OSPAR share. The close cooperation between our organizations is an excellent example of what can be achieved when states come together in pursuit of a common goal. OSPAR and HELCOM have a long and successful history of cooperation, and we have made significant progress over the last decades in addressing the pressing environmental issues facing our ocean. For example, HELCOM and OSPAR have been frontrunners in limiting shipping emissions, in assessing and addressing nutrient inputs, which is the root cause of eutrophication, and in reducing the inputs of some of the most serious hazardous substances. Our recent holistic assessments, HELCOM's HOLAS 3 and OSPAR's Quality Status Report 2023, are further examples of our contributions to improving the collective understanding of the marine environment and the pressures impacting on it. Both these assessments have shown that the Northeast Atlantic and the Baltic Sea continue to face challenges and require regional cooperation to ensure the effective protection and sustainable use of the marine environment. As we celebrate this important occasion, OSPAR reaffirms its commitment to continue our collective action towards a healthy marine environment. Now, more than ever, regional seas conventions continue to play a crucial role in delivering the ocean we need for the future we want. In conclusion, we would like to extend our heartfelt congratulations to HELCOM on their remarkable journey thus far, and we look forward to continuing working with you towards a more sustainable future for our ocean. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our next greeting will come from Razan Al-Mubarak from IUCN, and it will be pre-recorded greeting, so that's why please, video.
Excellencies, dear ministers, distinguished delegates. As president of the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, it is a privilege to join you in celebrating the Helsinki Commission's 50th anniversary. Congratulations on crossing this significant milestone, half a century of dedication to the Baltic Sea. Though I'm not with you today in beautiful Riga, I extend a heartfelt thanks to you via video for your relentless pursuit to prioritize nature in every decision affecting the Baltic Sea. Your efforts are widely recognized and respected across the global conservation community. The Helsinki Commission's visionary Baltic Sea Action Plan and your alignment with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework are commendable. IUCN is proud to have partnered early with the Helsinki Commission on advancing area-based conservation, and we're eager to continue supporting your leadership towards the ambitious 30 by 30 target. I am excited to inform you that IUCN will be initiating an application for observer status within the Helsinki Commission. Several parties to the Helsinki Commission are also state members of IUCN, and many of our member organization and Commission members are deeply engaged in the Baltic region. Lastly, I invite you all to the upcoming IUCN World Conservation Congress in Abu Dhabi in October 2025. It will be a pivotal moment for our community as we tackle the pressing biodiversity and climate challenges. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing our vital work together for a thriving Baltic Sea and a resilient planet.
Thank you. And there is another congratulatory remark recorded by video, and that's why Inger Andersen will greet us from UNEP. Please, video.
My congratulations to the Helsinki Convention for marking 50 years since the signature of this important deal. The 10 parties to this convention have, during this time, worked together to protect the Baltic Sea from pollution, whether from the air, the land, or the sea, to preserve biological diversity, to promote the sustainable use of marine resources, and of course, to cushion the sea against the growing impacts of climate change. Your work has been a valuable complement to UNEP's Regional Seas program, which this year also marks its 50th anniversary. When founded, the Helsinki Convention and the UNEP Regional Seas program were ahead of their time, truly. We both saw the need to address accelerating environmental degradation of the world's shared marine and coastal environment through research, through international cooperation, and through concrete action plans. And we have to say that both have brought very real results. So my thanks to you for your commitment. But as I also told the meeting of the UNEP Regional Seas program in Bridgetown last year, the triple planetary crisis is accelerating. And here, of course, I'm referring to the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature and biodiversity loss, and the crisis of pollution and waste. Resultant threats to marine and coastal environments are, in fact, accelerating, and you are living that on your coasts. You highlighted this trend in your 2023 report on the state of the Baltic Sea, which shows concerning environmental pressures across the whole sea. So, we must all up our game for all the regional seas, and we must do so fast. And we must lean on multilateralism as best way to bring results. This means all nations committing to strong implementation of every international deal that protects the environment, from regional accords like the Helsinki Convention to global deals like the Paris Agreement, like the instrument on plastic pollution, which we're now negotiating, like the new global framework on chemicals, and like the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In this regard, it is very encouraging that the Baltic Sea region is on track to reach the global target of 30% protected by 2030. My thanks and congratulations once more. I look forward to seeing more concrete action under the Baltic Sea Action Plan for a healthy sea that sustainably serves the needs of all who rely on it.
Thank you. And there's one more organization representing Baltic Sea stakeholders, and that's why I would like on stage Head of WASAP Secretariat, Alda Nicodemus, as well, for congratulatory remarks. Alda is, as I said, the Secretary, Head of WASAP Secretariat. So please, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of WASAP, which is more than 30 years lasting cooperation of ministers responsible for spatial planning and development of the Baltic Sea region countries and its community, I have a pleasure to greet the HELCOM in relation to the half-century anniversary of the Helsinki Convention. We all are aware how fragile is the Baltic Sea due to the natural circumstances and because of the growing pressure of human activities at the sea and as well as on the land. to ensure safeguarding in biodiversity and achieve good environmental status of the sea, HELCOM plays remarkable role and makes enormous efforts. WASAB contribution to reach that goal is by enhancing the coordinated maritime spatial planning across the entire region and balancing interests of various sectors and stakeholders. I would like to use today's celebration occasion to emphasize the close cooperation of HELCOM and WASAB, which is continuing effectively since 2010. The HELCOM WASAB Maritime Spatial Planning Working Group was established to ensure cooperation among the Baltic Sea region countries for coherent maritime spatial planning processes in the Baltic Sea. Our cooperation has been noted at the European scale and even beyond. The Baltic Sea region is recognized as a frontrunner in maritime spatial planning, and other sea basins, like the North Sea, are eager to learn from our collaboration and experience. We do implement the common and specific policy frameworks of both organizations. For example, Baltic Sea Action Plan, Regional Maritime Spatial Planning Roadmap 2030, and the last year endorsed WASAB Vision for the Territorial Development of the Baltic Sea region in 2040. Furthermore, I want to emphasize that together, WASAB and HELCOM contribute to the implementation of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region by executing the coordination of the policy area spatial planning. And finally, big thanks go to the HELCOM Secretariat for a good and smooth cooperation with us, WASAB Secretariat, to make the Baltic Sea region sustainable and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you, Alda. And there is one more greeting coming from two organizations at the end. So I would like to invite on stage Johanna Fox, Director of Baltic Sea Program from WWF, and also Mikhail Durkin, Coalition Clean Baltic Executive Secretary. And as we see, there are already more people coming. So I know that you will explain who you are.
Yes. Thank you very much. And as we heard, we're two organizations here, we're two observer organizations from WWF and Coalition Clean Baltics. And we are a network organization that represents environmental NGOs that are active in all parts of the Baltic Sea. And as observers to HELCOM, we're the watchdogs. We're the broken records that says implementation, implementation, implementation of the Baltic Sea Action Plan. And hopefully you've been inspired and perhaps pushed by us for some of the actions that we're here to celebrate today. And we really want to thank you for allowing us to take such an active part of the HELCOM family. And we're here to celebrate this middle-aged HELCOM, and I have to say, as someone who learned to walk at the same time as HELCOM, it's quite amazing to learn about the history and the progress that has been made in HELCOM. Yet the state of the Baltic Sea also speaks for itself, so we need more action. Be proud, but don't be satisfied, as was said during the Ministerial Meeting earlier today. But who is HELCOM? Now we actually want you to do a little bit of exercise, because I think we've sat on our bums a little bit too long.
So actually we would like to offer you a little bit of fitness for your hands. And first we would like to see which part of HELCOM family do you belong to. So please raise your hand, those who are still ministers and state secretaries or high-level representatives in the room. Okay, that is a nice picture. But I'm quite sure that the next question is certainly will be having a lot of hands. Who of you are representing HELCOM Secretariat? Great! Big applause to these folks. Who of those here in the hall are HELCOM observers? quite a good crowd as well. Then who of those are national administrations? Yeah, also a considerable amount. Then, of course, we should not forget about scientists. Yes, quite a bit as well. How about industry? Industry. Okay. Well, something to do, of course, for HELCOM. Another thing to remember. What about farmers? Yes, great. At least we have some. And fishermen? Fishermen. Okay. Well, again, another thing to address. Then the second question we would like to raise also, and sorry for doing these exercises with you, but I hope you really enjoyed. What links you personally to the Baltic Sea? What are, in your personal experience, how you are connected to the Baltic Sea? So let's start with those who are living by the sea. Great, fantastic. Those of you who were born by the sea. Oof, well, again, amazing. Those of you who work by the coast or at sea. Fantastic as well, yeah. And now a little bit of, well, a property issue. Who of those are owning a boat? Yeah, considerable amount still also. Who of those of you like to swim in the Baltic Sea? Fantastic. And then two questions related to environment and nature in the Baltic Sea area. Who of those of you have seen an algal bloom? Well, sorry, quite a majority, I guess. And finally, who of those of you have seen a marine mammal or mammals, preferably in the wild? Still a good thing. Now I'll pass to Bettina.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the last question. And for this one, we will ask you not to just raise your hands, but actually rise from your seats if you want to answer it positively. So I will ask you, who in this room would like to celebrate and take action for a healthy Baltic Sea in 2030? Please rise. And of course, this is what we were hoping for. So I would like you to look at this community, look at around you, look at us. This is HELCOM. So please, when you go home now, do not go home and go back to the business as usual. Go back, be bold, be brave, and act. Go back and save the Baltic Sea. Congratulations to us being HELCOM.
Thank you so much for such an active greeting, and I think it's really inspiring as well, really. Look at yourself, this is HELCOM, and let's go home with this takeaway message. But this official event is coming to an end, and that's why I would like to invite on stage Evija Schmitte, the chair of HELCOM now, to close this event and give her remarks.
Dear HELCOM family and friends, and we just learned that family left in the room. All others already left this event, but I tried to wrap today's event, and as we were listening in all speeches of today, we see that we all have very close and personal relationships with the Baltic Sea, and we have all private history of HELCOM. And everyone has special memories, and also me. Although I was quite young then, I have also two bright memories from 1974. First one, the Helsinki Convention was signed, and the second, the ABBA won the Eurovision. Now 50 years passed, and Latvian chairmanship organizes the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Convention, and Latvia is going to win Eurovision. As you see, the anniversary slogan is proud past and promising future, I translate to you what actually that means. That means many thanks to those who work hard for the Baltic Sea, and happy retirement at the healthy Baltic Sea and good mental status. As we talked today a lot about the indicators, and this was the indicator of HELCOM sense of humor, and I think it's, as we see, is still great. And after preparing and chairing of Ministerial Meeting this morning, this was the most comprehensive and deepest speech I can deliver. I was able to deliver now. But I would like to just invite to celebrate this great event and this anniversary, and so that free cocktails outside for everyone. My host, and let's celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. Thank you. Yeah, the cocktails will start at 7 here in the lobby area, so you are very welcome to join, but I really want to thank you all today for participating and your patience for so many hours being here. And also I would like to thank our online participants, members of HELCOM family who were not present here with us, but anyway were with us together. I really hope that everything what we heard today will bring us inspiration and courage for the further work that will be done together. And as we already heard at the beginning of this event, that I really hope that we will all love and treasure Baltic Sea each day more than we did yesterday. So thanks once again to everyone. And since we are all here, we would like to invite you for a HELCOM family picture, and that's why you would need to stand up again and come on the stage. Please feel free, everyone, to come here on the stage, and then we will see the guidelines how and when and where we will stand from photographer probably.